Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a palace that smells less like power and more like rote incense burning too thick, donkey milk souring in bronze bowls, and a child's laugh echoing down stone halls like a bad omen. Your crown is waiting, but so is your groom is 10. His hands are sticky with figs, not swords, and tomorrow he'll be your husband by law. 10 years old, and he owns you. Could you smile at that face, knowing it's the only way you'll survive till morning? That's the world Cleopatra was born into. The bedtime history no Hollywood reel dares to show, and the real twist. The thing Rome feared most wasn't her beauty or her pearls. It was her power to control even the story of her own death. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The torchlight flickers against the plastered walls, and for a moment the shadows seem thicker than the stone itself. You sit cross-legged on a floor that sweats with dampness, smelling of limestone dust and incense burned down to ash. The scent is supposed to mean holiness, but all it does is coat your tongue with bitterness, like chewing old coins. Across the room, children chase each other, their sandals slapping stone, their laughter bright but slightly cracked as if they already know. Playtime here is rehearsal for marriage contracts. One of them is your little brother. He's 10. He will be crowned beside you, and on paper at least there will also be your husband. No one in this palace blushes at the idea. Here it's not scandal, it's tradition. As if every wedding feast is just a family reunion with better wine. You glance at him. His face is sticky with figs, juice drying in streaks along his chin. His crown slides sideways because his head is too small. He waves a reed staff like a soldier, but the reed bends at the tip. Everyone claps, proud. But you notice his hands tremble under the weight of gold bangles he doesn't understand. You smile because smiling is safer, but inside, you taste bile rising with the incense smoke. The palace teaches you early appearances matter more than truth. There's a running joke among the scribes, though no one laughs too loudly, that this dynasty doesn't have a dating pool. It has a puddle, centuries of siblings marrying siblings, cousins folding back into cousins, until the family tree looks less like branches and more like a knot. A genetic pretzel soaked in wine and paranoia. You know the whispers: epilepsy, madness, weak rulers playing flutes instead of ruling. The old king was called Orleats, the flute player, because he was better at music than monarchy. Rome laughed at him, but Rome never starved. Egypt did. You wonder, sitting in that room, whether anyone will remember that famine hurt more than scandal. The priests say purity keeps the gods loyal, but purity feels heavy on your skin, like a damp cloak you can't shake off. Every time your brother stumbles through another ceremony, you wonder if your future is tethered to the wrong heartbeat. A nurse presses sour donkey milk into your hands drink, they say. It makes the skin glow. You sip because refusing is rude, and the taste crawls up your throat. Thick, chalky, clinging. It smells like wet hay, but you swallow anyway. One day people will write that you bathe in this stuff, that it keeps you immortal. Tonight it just feels like drinking someone else's burden. The torches hiss when resin drips. You focus on the sound because it's easier than listening to courtiers plan your wedding. 10 years old. 10. Imagine, if you can, being bound legally to a child who can tie his own sandals. Would you laugh, or would you choke on that laughter because you know her mockery is treason? Drop a comment. If you want, could you stand at an altar beside a boy and call it power? The air grows warmer as bodies gather, relatives debating dowries you'll never see. You're paraded in jewels that pinch, eyeliner drawn thick, the wing curling up like a dagger. Everyone claps at the illusion, as if paint can replace stability. Inside, you feel a pulse of irony. This dynasty wants eternity, but it can't even last a dinner without arguing who gets the best figs. Later, when you lie on a reed mat, the torches still echo behind your eyelids. Their glow mutates into bars of a cage. You try to breathe, but the palace walls seem to lean closer. Torchlight and filth blur together. Hot air pressing down like a living thing. You close your eyes. Somewhere in the dark, you hear a child cough. Somewhere else, Another giggles, and in that uneasy space between the two sounds, you realize survival here isn't about love or loyalty. It's about learning to keep your smile steady while the air itself turns poisonous. The palace corridors stretch colder than usual tonight. You pad along stone floors slick with torchlight, the air pressing in with whispers of betrayal. Your brother husband's allies circle like jackals, their sandals scuffing and their voices low, planning how to make you disappear without a ripple. You know too well what happens to siblings who fall out of favour. Some vanish into cellars, some into tombs no one visits. You've decided not to vanish at all. Survival here means invention, and invention means a gamble that looks ridiculous until it works. That's how you end up staring at a rug massive, woven thick, the kind usually meant to dress floors in Alexandria's mansions. Tonight it's your lifeboat. Servants lift it, rolling fabric tighter, tighter still, until you're pressed flat inside, the coarse weave scratching your cheek, the smell of wool and dust filling your lungs. The fibres press so close you can taste them, dry as parchment, bitter as old bread. The torchlight disappears. It's just you, your heartbeat, and the slow squeeze of cloth. Imagine lying there, breath shallow, body bent, every shift making the cords creak louder. A human parcel, smuggled not through alleys but into the very chamber of Rome's most dangerous man. You don't know if Caesar will laugh, gasp, or have you killed on the spot. But you know hell, remember, and in this palace, memory is currency. The servants grunt as they lift you. Each step jolts through your ribs, dust puffing around your lips. You choke it back, praying silence. Outside, Alexandria hums faintly, ships creaking in the harbour, gulls screaming at the night. Inside the rug, you're blind. And strangely, this is where the fear mutates into something playful, because the absurdity of it is too sharp. You, Queen of Egypt, reduced to cargo, a royal Amazon delivery before there was even Prime. Historians argue later, did you truly roll yourself in the rug, or was it a sack? The sources disagree. Plutarch's drama against others' practical notes. But in the candlelit chamber, when the bundle unfurls, the fabric spilling open like a peeled fruit, the debate doesn't matter, because there you are, hair-tangled, coal-smudged, the smell of dust still clinging to your robes, and Caesar sees you. And he laughs. Not the cruel laugh of Rome mocking your dynasty, but the startled kind, like someone watching a cat leap out of a sealed jar. You rise slowly, as if you meant to look this dramatic, smoothing folds of your tunic, ignoring the carpet burns across your arms. The courtiers gape. You taste the air wine, sweat, the metallic tang of Roman armour. You exhale, and the palace tension eases just a little. The fabric is no longer your cage, it's your stage. And here's the irony, what suffocated you moments ago now delivers freedom. The woven threads that pressed your ribs are the same ones that buy you space to breathe. A trick, a joke, a survival tactic in disguise. Even Caesar can't miss the audacity. He sees not a victim, but a player who understands theatre, and Rome loves theatre. What would you do if your life hinged on being remembered in one scene, in one gesture, in the way dust clings to your hair? Would you gamble it all on a performance inside scratchy wool, or would you play it safe and fade? Drop your answer in the quiet of your mind or in the comments, if you dare. The torchlight flickers across his face, bronze shadows stretching long. He doesn't dismiss you. He doesn't kill you. Instead, he leans forward, eyes sharp with calculation. This is the moment when claustrophobia shifts into possibility. You feel it in your chest. The rug may have squeezed your lungs, but it cracked open your fate. And later, when you lie awake, the memory stays with you. The scrape of fibres against your skin, the taste of dust, the absurdity of laughter cutting through fear. The motif follows you, SIV, but instead of suffocating, it now binds opportunity. You smile in the dark, because tonight proved a truth Rome didn't want to admit. Egypt still knows how to turn survival into spectacle. The Nile waits for you at dawn, wide and dark, carrying the breath of marsh reeds and rotting fish. The air feels damp enough to cling to your eyelashes, as if the river itself is testing you. You stand at the edge of the quay, cloak heavy with perfume meant to mask the sour smoke of last night's torches. Beside you, soldiers shuffle, their sandals squeaking on wet stone, eyes darting for Roman helmets that might appear at any moment. But you know the most dangerous man in Egypt is already watching from inside his tent. Caesar waits. You don't walk in with trembling knees. You glide aboard a barge dressed for spectacle. Its deck glitters with gold leaf, thin sheets that catch the rising sun and throw it back like fire across the water. Musicians tune their lyres and flutes, their notes trembling in the fog, almost drowned by the low croak of bullfrogs hidden in the reeds. The smell is thick cinnamon oil rubbed into the wood, roses floating in bowls, a haze of incense so strong you could choke. This is not luxury. This is camouflage. A soft coo hidden under garlands. The river rolls beneath you. Sailors dip silver-plated oars, the rhythm sharp, echoing like a heartbeat you can't ignore. Antony isn't here, yet that belongs to the next act. Tonight, this play is staged for Caesar. You lean against the canopy, styled as Isis, linen clinging to your skin, your coal-lined eyes heavy but awake. You're not trying to seduce, you're trying to brand. In Rome, soldiers march to drums. They march to perfume. One of the priests mutters that you smell too Greek, that your tongue betrays your bloodline. You smile, because you can answer him in Egyptian, then in Aramaic, then in Hebrew. Languages roll off your tongue like silk ribbons. You don't need an interpreter. You are the interpreter, and the looks on their faces, half awe, half fear, are sweeter than figs. Imagine the shock for 300 years. No Ptolemy bothered to learn Egyptian. You did. In that moment, you aren't just a queen. You're a voice they cannot dismiss. Caesar joins the barge, tired from war, toga rumpled, eyes calculating. He expects a desperate exile, maybe a frightened girl begging for protection. Instead, he finds you smelling of cinnamon, lit like a goddess, flanked by music and laughter that doesn't belong to Rome. You don't kneel. You pour him wine, and you talk about harvests, about grain shipments, about what Egypt could be if Rome had the right partner. Every word is both survival and threat. You don't say ally. You don't say lover. You say, with a smile, do you like figs? The question is harmless on the surface, but it hides a snare. Figs in Egypt are sacred food of fertility, fruit of gods. In Rome, figs are also slang for weakness, a joke traded among senators. You twist meaning with a single sentence. Caesar tilts his head, amused, maybe unsettled. He answers carefully. That caution is your victory. The barge slides farther into the current, incense smoke curling around you like snakes. You feel sweat bead beneath your linen, the weight of gold chains biting into your collarbone. Every ornament is a burden, but every burden is armor. That's the joke of royalty. What strangles you also shields you. You take another sip of wine, thick and sour, and think about the absurdity you're offering Roman soldiers drinks while crocodiles drift just beneath the waterline, yellow eyes unblinking. You wonder if Caesar notices, or if the irony belongs only to you. Modern scholars argue whether Caesar truly fell for you, or simply calculated the benefits Egypt's gained for Rome's hungry. Nile harbours for Roman fleets. Maybe he did both. Desire and strategy aren't enemies. They share a bed as easily as any two monarchs, and you understand that. That's why you lean closer when you speak, not to whisper sweet nothings, but to make sure every syllable of policy is wrapped in warmth. Rome will call it seduction. You call it statecraft. You sense the courtiers staring. They think you're gambling your throne on a man already married, but you know better. Caesar isn't a risk. He is a lever, and you are learning how to pull. The musicians change tune, a softer melody that floats across the deck. You look past Caesar toward the horizon. The Nile shimmers, fog thinning. Fishermen in reed boats freeze, staring at the golden barge as though a god has drifted into their nets. You catch their gaze and hold it, their mouths open. They whisper Isis. You raise your chin. The trick works, even if tomorrow brings exile again. Today they saw you divine. Could you, in Caesar's place, resist that scene, the fragrance, the music, the sight of villagers bowing without command? Would you call it vanity, or survival dressed in velvet? The conversation drags into evening. Shadows stretch across the river, torchlight planted on deck mutating once more. First it burned as prison bars, then as a rug suffocating thread. Now it licks the Nile like molten gold, soft and mesmerizing. You feel its heat on your cheek, its glow in Caesar's eyes. You let silence hang. Silence is often sharper than words. When the barge finally docks, Caesar doesn't dismiss you. He escorts you back, a Roman general flanked by Egyptian guards, pretending this is diplomacy and not theatre. The priests bow, the scribes take notes, the servants scurry with figs and honey. But you taste something else in the air relief. Not victory yet, but relief. The rug once trapped your breath. The torch once crowded your lungs. Tonight, the river opens. Tonight, you breathe. And as you lie awake later, incense still clinging to your hair, you understand what Rome fears most. Not your jewels, not your pearls, not even your beauty. What Rome fears is that you can turn survival into ritual, and ritual into power. You close your eyes and the river sound lulls you. Crocodiles shift beneath the surface, the oar's rhythm still pounding in your ears. You smile, just faintly, because you know tonight you didn't seduce Caesar. You frightened him in the quiet way that only a queen who survives everything can. The chamber is dim, heavy with torch smoke that paints the ceiling black. You sit on a low couch, a goblet of wine in your hand, watching the Romans bicker. Their Latin is clipped, smug, each word tossed like dice on a table. They think you can't follow all of it. They think you're a foreign queen whose ears are too Greek, too soft. You smile, and then you answer in their own tongue. Smooth, precise, not just the words, but the cadence, the swagger. For a moment, the room stutters. Their laughter dies. Their goblets freeze in midair, because in an instant, you're not a translation waiting in the corner. You're the voice at the centre, sharper than any senator's. The torches spit resin and hiss as if applauding. You lean forward, your bracelets clinking like little cymbals. Then you shift again. Hebrew, Aramaic, Parthian. Each syllable lands like a blade tip. The air thickens with unease, because suddenly you aren't just a queen. You're 9 tongues braided together, and none of them belong to Rome. Imagine the shock for 3 centuries. Your dynasty ruled Egypt but didn't bother to speak Egyptian. Your ancestors treated the Nile like a rental property, their lips too proud to learn hello. And then there's you sliding into the priest dialect as casually as pouring wine. It isn't just intelligence, it's flexing. It's the difference between a senator's speech written by scribes and your voice, naked, fluent, undeniable. The Romans exchange glances. One mutters something under his breath, half an insult. You catch it. Of course you do. You reply in median sweetly, almost playfully. Tell your senate, you say, that I'm unimpressed and your toga needs ironing. The words ripple through the room like cold water. Some laugh nervously, some glare. Caesar only lifts a brow, his mouth twitching as if he's trying not to enjoy it. The motif returns as V-I-C-T-H-T, but here it's no longer cloth. It's language itself, threads twisted and pulled, binding everyone in the room. You weave with your tongue, and suddenly the rug is theirs, not yours. They're the ones wrapped tight, struggling for air. A servant stumbles in with figs and bread, the smell earthy, sour sweet. You take one, biting slowly, juice dripping down your hand. Then, still chewing, you pivot into Greek, spinning the conversation back to trade routes and alliances. Your ease is unsettling. The Romans prefer their opponents mute or mistranslated. You offer them neither. You offer them dominance disguised as courtesy. Would you feel threatened if the person across from you could dismantle your arrogance in your own language, could argue with you in Latin, then whisper to your slave in Nubian, then soothe your merchant in Aramaical without pausing to breathe? The scholars who write centuries later will claim you bewitched men with beauty, but beauty fades in candlelight. What doesn't fade is the way your words slice. A senator can recover from a glance. He can't recover from being humiliated in his mother tongue. The torchlight flickers hotter, smoke stinging your eyes. You don't blink. You let the sting settle. Let tears rim your lashes until they shimmer. To them it looks dramatic. To you it's just smoke. Another weapon borrowed from circumstance. Someone dares to call you Barbara, barbarian. You laugh, softly, gently. Then you remind him in perfect, textbook Latin that barbarian only means one whose tongue sounds strange. You tilt your head. Tell me whose tongue sounds strange tonight. The room tilts with silence. The only sound is the torch crackling, wax dripping, the faint shuffle of sandals on stone. You sip wine to break the pause. The metallic taste coats your tongue. Outside, the Nile wind pushes against the shutters. You imagine the voices of villagers drifting on it, the prayers, the bargaining, the songs. You know them all. You could answer every cry in its own rhythm. That is power. Rome cannot catalogue, cannot legislate. And the irony makes you smile. The empire that conquered Gaul with legions is unnerved by one woman who knows how to say pass the salt in 9 different tongues. So you keep going, letting the languages roll, switching mid-sentence just because you can. Words like daggers, words like veils. The Romans can't pin you down. Every time they think they've caught your meaning, you slip into another dialect, another register. The motif mutates again, threads twisting tighter. But this time you aren't the one suffocating. They are. When the council finally ends, you step outside, the air cooler, the stars scattered thick over Alexandria. You breathe deeply, chest expanding with relief. The torch smoke lingers in your hair, but the night air clears your lungs. And in that quiet, you feel it, the power of being the only person in the room who can choose the language of the fight. Rome has armies, and you have words. And tonight, words were enough. The palace smells different tonight, not of torches or figs or incense, but of milk sour, thick, animal heavy. You stand beside a marble basin filled to the lip, white liquid sloshing as servants pour jug after jug. Donkeys bray in the courtyard, their cries cutting through the air like rusty hinges. Hundreds of them, kept not for burdens or ploughs, but for their milk. A herd turned into a cosmetic factory. You step into the bath slowly, linen lifted, skin prickling at the contrast. Warm stone beneath your feet, cool milk climbing your legs. It clings like glue, sourness wrapping you tighter than any rug. The smell is unmistakable hay and sweat, a sweetness gone wrong. The priests call it divine, you call it sticky, and yet you sink in, because survival here isn't only strategy, it's spectacle. The motif returns, CV ICT, only now it isn't fabric, it's liquid, wrapping you, pulling you into its grasp. The milk coats every inch, tightening pores, bleaching skin, turning your body into a message Rome can't ignore. Your thoughts wander as you recline, head resting on stone rim. Historians centuries later will laugh at this Cleopatra, bathing in donkey milk, a queen turned influencer, chasing glow with livestock. But in the candlelight, it's not vanity, it's statecraft. Egypt breathes religion through ritual. Priests whisper about purity, about transformation. You become Isis, skin shining, scent shifting. A goddess clothed not in silk but in illusion. A servant leans close, handing you a paste ground from carmine beetles. Their crushed shells glitter crimson, thick as syrup. You smear it across your lips. The taste is metallic, bitter, almost coppery like blood. The Romans will say you bewitched men with a kiss. You know better, you armed yourself with colour, a blade disguised as a lure. You hold a mirror of polished bronze, the smoky eye staring back isn't soft. It's war paint, coal mixed with lead, burned almond paste, animal fat. The fumes sting your nose as you apply it, lashes blackened, wings sharp enough to slice. The reflection makes you laugh under your breath. What empire can truly defend itself against eyeliner drawn like a weapon? You imagine the courtiers choking if they saw the recipe book dung mixed with honey, crocodile bile stirred into paste, powders that glitter and poison all at once. Beauty here isn't about comfort, it's about control. Every stroke across your skin is both seduction and intimidation. A senator may scoff at your crown, but he can't scoff at the way his eyes water when you enter the room, perfumed with cinnamon heavy enough to make him dizzy. The torches hiss louder, their smoke curling into the chamber like rival serpents. You raise a hand to signal, and servants bring trays of ointments, frankincense resin, rose oil, ground malachite. You inhale. The scent is sharp, resinous, heady. You rub the oils into your arms, your collarbone, leaving trails that shimmer under firelight. To the priests, it is sanctification. To you, it is armor. Would you endure it if survival required you to paint your skin with toxins, to soak your body in milk until it curdled? Would you trade comfort for power, Or would you let the Empire swallow you unadorned? The irony makes you smirk. Rome imagines itself strong because it commands legions. Yet here you are, commanding with cosmetics, conquering with scent. Their steel rusts in the Nile's damp air. Your rouge outlasts them. Later, as the milk drains away, you step onto cool stone. Your skin feels coated, as if wrapped in a second layer that doesn't belong to you. You towel off, staring at your reflection again. The face looking back isn't flesh, it's a mask, and that mask terrifies, because it convinces not only others, it convinces you. Outside, donkeys bray again. A ridiculous chorus, mocking, absurd. You chuckle at the sound. Somewhere, some future chronicler will twist this into comedy, but here, in this moment, it is war. Servants present another concoction, crushed ants mixed with resin, a stain for your nails. You let it dry, black-red against the torchlight. Each finger gleams like a warning, as if dipped in blood. Then they braid your hair, rubbing oils into your scalp, weaving in threads of gold. The scent of almonds mixes with the sour milk still clinging faintly to your skin. The combination is dizzying, overwhelming, perfect. A Roman envoy will enter tomorrow and breathe this atmosphere milk sourness hidden under rose, beetle pigment glowing on your lips, smoke and resin stinging his eyes. He will cough, and he will call it love. That's the trick, and that's the horror. The motif mutates once more. Torchlight against bronze, filth turned fragrant, survival rebranded. What once suffocated now blinds with brilliance. You realize the game isn't simply to endure, but to dazzle, to choke the room with beauty until they forget to breathe. You recline again, muscles aching from stillness, eyes watering from fumes. You let it happen, because the pain is temporary. The impression is permanent. Rome will record your scandals, your lovers, your downfall. But tonight, under this sour milk and smoke, you rewrite the script with powders and pastes. You become unforgettable. The chamber is quiet except for the faint scratching of reed pens and the occasional clink of bronze bowls. Tonight, the palace doesn't smell of milk or roses. It smells of bitterness, ground herbs, crushed minerals, strange resins heated until their smoke burns the throat. The air itself feels like medicine gone wrong. You breathe shallowly because the smoke clings to your tongue, leaving a metallic aftertaste. In the center of the room, prisoners kneel, their ankles bound, their faces pale with the same question you refuse to ask aloud: what will it feel like? A soldier stands at the door, pretending not to watch too closely. Even he looks uneasy. Everyone does. Because this isn't ritual, not beauty, not theatre. This is research. The motif returns IVISETHT. Not a rug, not milk this time. It is the grip of inevitability. Rope around ankles, smoke around lungs, the future around your neck. You walk slowly, trailing your fingers along the edge of a bronze table. Small cups line the surface, some filled with powders, others with liquids cloudy as storm water, hemlock, wolfsbane, extracts of poppy, ground belladonna, resin scraped from the bark of foreign trees. Each one promises a different kind of ending. Quick, slow, laughing, convulsing, beautiful, ugly. A scribe clears his throat, reading the notes of the previous trial. One prisoner laughed uncontrollably before collapsing, eyes wide, lips foaming. Another seized until his jaw broke. Another went limp within seconds. Skin still smooth, face calm, as if asleep. That one, you remember, made you lean forward, because if death must come, let it come like Thaddeus, silent, convincing the world that queens die as goddesses, not as gasping mortals. You pick up a vial, holding it to the torchlight. The liquid glows amber, syrupy thick. A few drops on your fingertips sting, leaving a faint numbness. You wonder how long before it silences a body. Minutes, hours, days. Rome will one day tell stories about your asp, your breast bared to a serpent. But here, in this room, you suspect the snake was never needed. Why gamble on an animal when chemistry is more precise? The prisoner chosen tonight is young, maybe 20. His wrists tremble against the rope. He looks at you, and for a moment you almost flinch, because his eyes aren't angry. They're curious, as if he wants to know the answer too. The guards tip the liquid past his lips. He gags, coughs, swallows. The silence stretches. Then the convulsions begin, arms jerking, eyes rolling back, body straining against the rope. You don't look away. No one does. It is horror, yes, but it is also data. His chest heaves, then it stops. His face freezes in a grimace you'd rather not remember. That one is too messy. You shake your head. The scribe writes it down, not suitable. Another prisoner is offered a different cup. This one collapses gently, eyelids drooping, mouth curving almost into a smile. His breath slips out like a sigh. Peaceful, almost beautiful. You lean closer. That one, yes. That one could be useful. Would you do it, if you were her? If survival meant mastering not only life but also the shape of your own death, would you test poison like perfumes, searching for the one that flatters you best? The irony tastes sharp. Roman chroniclers will later sneer, calling you cruel, calling you sorceress. They will ignore the truth. This isn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It is control. In a world where men plan your future, at least you can plan your ending. The torches crackle louder, shadows jumping like nervous onlookers. You order the scribe to note fast, calm, dignified. Then you dismiss the soldiers, leaving only smoke and silence. You press your palm to the cold stone table, tracing the ring left by spilled resin. The smell makes your eyes water. Somewhere outside, a donkey brays. The sound is absurd in contrast. Cosmetics and poison, beauty and death, sharing the same palace. You almost laugh, because what is the difference? Really, one concoction keeps skin glowing. Another stops the heart. Both are recipes, both are performances. You pace the room, bracelets clinking, sandals scraping the dust. You imagine future scenarios: exile, betrayal, capture. Octavian's men storming these halls, dragging you in chains. Would you let them, or would you drink your own mixture, slipping away before Rome can write your ending for you? The motif mutates again. Torchlight hisses, turning the smoke into fabric, wrapping you in folds of inevitability. You can feel the weight, the squeeze, the same suffocation as the rug, as the milk bath. But here, the grip is chosen. That's the difference. When you finally leave the chamber, the night air feels almost sweet. You inhale deeply, grateful to be alive, grateful that for now the vials remain only notes in a ledger. But in your mind, you carry the taste of bitterness, the sight of a body going still, the certainty that one day this knowledge will be your final crown. And as you walk the dark corridor, sandals clicking, you whisper to yourself not a prayer, not a spell, just a promise. When the end comes, it will be mine, not theirs. The banquet hall hums with overlapping voices, laughter echoing against painted walls, the smell of roasted goose and honeyed dates thick in the air. Torches flare, dripping resin that hisses when it hits bronze dishes. The smoke mixes with musk and perfume, creating a haze that blurs the frescoes of gods on the ceiling. Tonight isn't about prayers or treaties. Tonight is about proving who can own excess itself. You recline on a low couch, the silk cushions damp from spilled wine. Bracelets weigh heavy on your wrists, each clink another reminder that wealth can be as suffocating as rope. At your side sits Antony, broad-shouldered, flushed with wine, laughing too loudly at jokes half heard. His men hover nearby, officers, scribes, merchant, each straining to see whether the famous queen is truly more myth than mortal. Their eyes dart between your smile and the dishes piled with grapes, pomegranates, and roasted quail glistening with fat. The motif returns: SIVICTHT. Not rope this time, not milk. Tonight it is luxury itself, woven so tightly around everyone present that they can hardly breathe. You lift a pearl, not a decoration, not a trinket. A pearl the size of a pigeon's egg, glimmering under the torchlight like a frozen moon fragment. The hall gasps. Even Antony straightens, his drunken haze pierced by shock. Rome has jewels. Yes, but nothing like this. Pearls here are not ornaments. They are the currency of gods. A servant brings vinegar in a silver goblet, the acrid scent cutting through the sweetness of figs and honey. You drop the pearl into the cup, At first, nothing. Then a faint hiss. Tiny bubbles bloom, fizzing upward. The crowd leans in. The pearl shivers, slowly dissolving, its perfection unraveling in sour acid. The room falls silent except for the crackle of torches and the faint fizz of destruction. You swirl the cup, lifting it to your lips. The vinegar stings your nose, sharp as a blade. The pearl melts further, surrendering its body into the liquid. You drink. Cold, sour, metallic. The taste slides down your throat like defiance itself. Anthony laughs, booming but uncertain. Impossible, he mutters, eyes darting to the goblet, to your calm face. But the evidence glimmers in the emptiness of your cup. A treasure worth kingdoms swallowed in a single gulp. Would you call it vanity or strategy? Rome sees decadence. Egypt sees demonstration. To consume more wealth in a minute than a legion could plunder in a season is not indulgence. It is intimidation. The irony makes you smirk. Rome plants banners in soil, burns villages, starves provinces to prove dominance. You prove it with vinegar. Which empire truly terrifies more? The one that conquers bodies, or the one that devours empires for dessert? A priest, voice trembling, whispers that pearls are the tears of the gods. You tilt the cup, lips stained faintly, and answer, then let the gods weep for me. The hall exhales, some cheer, delighted by audacity, some scowl, uneasy at the casual blasphemy. Anthony stares at you as if unsure whether to kiss you or flee. The motif mutates again. Torchlight dances on wine stains, on pearls in crowns, on sweat glistening across foreheads. Luxury here is not pleasure. It is suffocation disguised as feast. Everyone breathes smoke and vinegar. Everyone feels the choke. You lean closer to Anthony, whispering not of love but of trade routes, of grain shipments, of Roman debts Egypt could erase. Your words drip like the vinegar still burning your throat. He listens. Not because he trusts you, but because he cannot ignore the woman who swallows fortunes while staring him in the eye. Historians centuries later will argue whether the pearl truly dissolved. Some claim the chemistry is exaggerated, the story polished like the jewel itself, but they miss the point. Truth or myth, the effect is the same. The room believed, Anthony believed, and belief is worth more than jewels. Would you, in his place, believe too? Watching a queen drink away enough wealth to bankrupt cities, would you laugh? Or would you shiver at the thought of what else she might consume without flinching? Later, after the feast wanes, after musicians lower their lyres and servants sweep bones from the floor, you recline again, pulse steady. You've proven your point. Beauty and wealth are not possessions. They are weapons. The pearl ceases to be treasure the moment you decide it is nothing. That is power Rome cannot catalogue. The torches sputter, shadows stretch. A draught sneaks through the hall, carrying the sour tang of vinegar mixed with the lingering sweetness of roasted fruit. You breathe it in, tasting both ruin and triumph. The soldiers still whisper, retelling what they saw, exaggerating each detail already. You know tomorrow it will spread beyond the palace, across Alexandria, across seas, the queen who drinks pearls, the woman who devours God's tears, and you smile, faint but certain, because you know what frightens Anthony most is not what you drank. It is that you didn't choke. The desert does not begin with silence. It begins with a sound you cannot escape, the rasp of sand against stone, the low groan of camels shifting under burdens, the faint wheeze of leather water skins slapping against each other like tired lungs. By the time you leave Alexandria's green edge and step into the expanse, your throat already feels lined with dust. The procession stretches like a snake. Soldiers in bronze, slaves bent under jars, musicians clutching instruments too delicate for this heat. Anthony rides beside you, already wiping sweat from his face, cursing the brightness. He is a soldier, yes, but one born of rivers, forests, rain. Here there is no shade, only the sun, a torch so large it drowns the world. The motif returns SIVICT. Today, it is the veil of heat. It wraps the horizon, coils around lungs, squeezes until every inhale tastes like fire. You know these tricks of survival. Childhood journeys upriver taught you. Date pits chewed slowly to keep saliva flowing, linen strips tied tight across hair to trap sweat, so the body cools as it evaporates. Romans laugh at such rituals, but Romans collapse quickly under suns like this. Already you see helmets heating into ovens, faces blistering red. Some soldiers tug them off, welcoming air only to invite burn. The sand shimmers. Heat bends light into illusions. Pools appear, promising cool water. Antony squints, pointing, almost hopeful. You do not even glance. Mirage. Always a lie. In the desert, lies arrive with more conviction than truth. A servant stumbles, knees folding like clay pots. The line halts. He falls flat, mouth open, lips cracked, eyes rolling white. Soldiers look to Antony, but Antony looks to you. You raise a hand. A guard tilts a skin, dripping water on the servant's tongue. He stirs faintly, half alive. The message is clear water flows when you command it. Rome may own legions, but here, in Thirst's kingdom, you are the Nile itself. The motif mutates. Not cloth, not pearls, not smoke. Now it is thirst, invisible cords tugging at throats. Every man is bound, every step is a bargain. Antony tries a boast, voice cracked. He reminds you of Gaul, of legions marching through forests, through Britain's storms. You smile softly. Let them march here. You murmur. He has no reply. Even laughter would waste moisture. By noon the horizon blurs into a copper haze. The desert erases detail, carving every figure into silhouettes. The musicians give up, instruments drooping like wilted flowers. The camels grunt, spitting foam. One collapses. The load must be divided. Soldiers curse, shoulders trembling under jars. Sand grinds into boots until skin bleeds. Would you, in Antony's place, keep following? Watching men blister, lips split, sandals burn through, or would you turn back, confess weakness? Let the queen see you undone. You keep walking. Because to stop is to invite death faster. The wind lifts, grains pelting your face like tiny blades. You taste salt, not from the desert, but from your own sweat running into your mouth. Every blink scratches eyes raw, yet you do not falter, because you belong to this land. Antony does not. At dusk, mercy comes. The sun falls low, heat bleeding from the sand in waves. Shadows stretch long, cool enough to make men sigh. You order camp at a cluster of rocks, the only shelter for miles. Fires are lit, weak sparks in a wilderness too vast to notice. Bread is passed, hard and gritty with sand. Goat meat roasts, but smoke stings throats already raw. Antony chews hard, pretending not to grimace at every grain grinding his teeth. You drink water slowly, deliberately, not gulping, not greedy. Let Antony see the control. Let the soldiers see that survival here is not feasting, but patience. Every drop measured, every swallow a choice. That is power. Not the pearl dissolved in vinegar, but the restraint of lips against thirst. The motif flickers again. Torchlight dances on dunes, their curves glowing like ocean waves frozen in place. You see the desert for what it is, an ocean without ships, a battlefield without bodies, a teacher that erases the proud. Rome may conquer provinces, but here, arrogance dries faster than sweat. Later, when the camp quiets, you sit on the sand, letting your fingers sift through grains, still warm. Antony snores somewhere behind, restless, uneasy. The stars above scatter thick, endless, more numerous than any city lamp. They feel closer here, as if leaning down to witness. You wonder if they laugh. Do they mock the Romans gasping at shadows? Do they admire that you endure where they fail? The desert whispers with the wind. It promises nothing except the lesson. Antony now knows. Egypt is not just palaces and pearls. Egypt is thirst, illusion, endurance. To rule her, you must survive her. Few do. And so you smile faintly, tasting dust on your tongue, the night cool against your skin. Tomorrow the sun will rise again, merciless as ever. Tomorrow the mirages will return, glittering lies on the horizon. But tonight you breathe, unbroken, proof that the desert answers to you. The desert fades behind you, but its lessons cling like dust in your lungs. By the time you return to Alexandria, Antony is different. He has felt the mirage mock him, has sweated through armor until it smelled like boiled leather, has learned that Rome's discipline crumbles faster than bread in Egyptian heat. Now he craves distraction, not endurance. He craves forgetting, and you ever observant know exactly how to provide it. So the banquets begin. Not ordinary banquets. Not the kind Rome holds in polished villas where senators argue over olives. These feasts are declarations, as sharp and absurd as swallowing pearls. Together, you and Antony invent a club, a private society of extremes. You name it something only half serious, half menacing the inimitable livers. A title so pompous it makes courtiers laugh and priests frown. To be inimitable is to rise above imitation. To live is to consume, loudly, dangerously, as though the world itself were a table meant to be cleared. The mood is dark comedy from the start. The first gathering begins with dancers dressed as satyrs, goat masks, grinning, waving torches that throw monstrous shadows across the walls. Musicians play until their strings snap. Tables sag under roasted oxen, bowls of figs, pyramids of pomegranates stacked until they teeter like siege towers. Jugs of wine flow until the floor turns sticky. The room reeks of sugar and sweat, the sweet tang of ferment layered with the musk of bodies pressing too close. Antony throws himself into it with the same recklessness he once hurled legions into battle. He drinks until his speech slurs, laughs until his face reddens, rips meat from bones with greasy fingers. His Roman discipline dissolves like the pearl you once drank, and he doesn't seem to mind. In Rome, he is Octavia's husband, a general under Octavian's thumb. Here, in Alexandria, he is untethered. He leaves Octavia behind without a backward glance, abandoning the tidy Roman wife for the chaos of your court. It shocks senators across the sea. Here, it earns him membership in the cult of excess. The motif takes shape banquets instead of wills. Each feast feels less like celebration and more like testament. Every toast, every spilled jug of wine, every jewel tossed carelessly into a bowl of figs is a declaration that tomorrow doesn't matter. They drink as though each goblet could be their last, and perhaps it is. Picture the scene. Statues of Isis stand solemn against the walls, their stone faces streaked red where wine splashes like blood. Courtiers cheer, soldiers howl, and someone topples into a brazier, sending sparks across the floor. The heat and stench rise together, dizzying, intoxicating. You recline on cushions, watching the storm unfold with a smile that is half amusement, half calculation. Excess, after all, is just another form of control. Your tongue tingles from the wine, thick and syrupy, leaving a metallic sting after too many sips. Meat sweats coat the air until every breath feels like inhaling fat. Torches spit resin that makes eyes water. This is not luxury, it is assault disguised as pleasure. Yet the guests roar for more. The soldiers crave the oblivion of forgetting Rome. The merchants crave the illusion of sitting equal with generals. Antony craves escape from the reality that Octavian sharpens his knives across the sea. Would you join them? If you were here, would you let the wine burn your throat until you forgot debt, duty, failure? Or would you recoil at the absurdity, the grotesque comedy of men pretending death will never touch them if they drink enough? The irony never escapes you. They call themselves inimitable, yet their laughter sounds desperate, hollow, echoing like men already condemned. Each banquet becomes a rehearsal for their own funerals, each toast a mock eulogy. They carve roasted oxen as though carving empires, spill wine as though spilling blood, howl until their voices rasp raw. And still the feasts grow wilder. Once, Antony orders an entire hall flooded so guests can recline on barges, while servants swim to bring them dishes. Another night, gold coins are baked into loaves, teeth cracking as guests bite into treasure and blood in equal measure. One courtier loses a tooth, another nearly chokes on a coin. The room laughs anyway. Pain becomes part of the entertainment. The motif sharpens banquets as testaments, wills written in wine. Each guest leaves more ruined, more desperate, as though the excess itself is binding them tighter to you. And it is. They stumble out with debts they can't repay, promises they can't keep, reputations they can't repair. You don't need chains. You only need goblets. But there is unease too. In the corners, priests whisper that Isis frowns on drunken blasphemy. Merchants mutter that Antony spends as if Rome's treasury were infinite. Even Antony, at moments, blinks through the haze as though remembering the wife he abandoned, the Senate he betrayed, the legions he still pretends to command. Then he gulps another cup, wipes his beard and laughs louder. Would you laugh, knowing your choices tether you to a queen Rome already paints as sorceress, temptress, destroyer? Or would you sober instantly, realizing the feasts are not escape but evidence? Each goblet another nail in your coffin. You see the future as clearly as the torches reflecting in the wine. Octavian will hear every rumour. He will frame each feast as betrayal, each night of laughter as treason. Antony will be remembered not for victories, but for drunken spectacles in Alexandria, and you will be remembered as the woman who fed him to excess, who drowned Rome's general in honeyed wine. Still, you recline, tasting grapes crushed between teeth, their juice sour sweet, sticky against your lips. The statues of Isis stare silently, wine streaking their faces like tears. The torches flare, shadows writhing across the ceiling. The smell of sweat and sugar clogs the air, thick enough to choke. Yet you do not choke. You smile, because you know that even ruin can be weaponized. Excess, wielded correctly, terrifies Rome more than armies. The night wears on. Guests collapse into corners, robes stained, mouths red, fingers greasy. Musicians drop instruments, too drunk to play. The floor glistens with spilled wine, slick as blood. Antony shouts for another round, voice cracking, desperate for laughter to drown whatever silence gnaws at him inside. And you, watching, realize the truth. This cult of excess is not about joy. It is about fear. They gorge because they dread famine. They laugh because they dread silence. They drink because they dread the war waiting beyond the palace. Banquets have become their wills. Each night they write their testament in wine, and each morning they wake closer to the end. The motif closes tight banquets instead of wills. The laughter is funeral music. The wine is embalming fluid. The statues of Isis stand witness to a kingdom slowly drinking itself into legend. And you, queen, strategist, survivor, sip slowly, tasting every drop, remembering the desert, remembering the pearl, remembering that even excess can be survival if you turn it into story. The feasts continue, but something begins to change. Laughter lingers too long, echoing sharp against marble until it sounds less like joy and more like hysteria. Even the wine tastes different, sour, metallic, as though each jug is steeped with foreboding. Alexandria still glitters, but behind the torchlight, shadows lengthen, and you decide to use them. This night, you order the banquet prepared in the temple annex, where the ceilings rise too high for the torches to chase away darkness. The walls are painted with gods, but the faces seem to melt in flickering light, their expressions twisted into smirks and sneers. You demand fewer lamps. You want the dark to breathe with the guests. The motif returns the banquet as will. Tonight it mutates, no longer only testament to excess, but a rehearsal for afterlife itself. The guests arrive unsteady, already expecting another night of gorging. Antony bellows, clapping shoulders, demanding music, but as they enter, silence meets them. The musicians play softly, minor notes that curl like smoke. The air smells not of roasted oxen, but of incense, sharp and bitter, the kind burned in tombs. The floor is cold stone. Their sandals scrape, hollow echoes. They glance at you, uneasy, wondering if they stepped into a funeral instead of a feast. You recline on cushions draped in black cloth, your gold jewellery gleaming unnaturally in the half-light. Your smile is small, unreadable. You raise a cup and the feast begins. Servants carry trays, but not piled high. Dishes arrive covered, lids lifted to reveal surprises both absurd and unsettling. A pig's head painted with coal-lined eyes, grapes dyed black with ash, bread shaped like human bones, baked until brittle, wine dyed darker, so thick it clings to cups like blood. The guests hesitate, then laugh nervously, forcing cheer. Antony laughs loudest, though the sound cracks. He tears bread, scattering crumbs like bones, and pours wine that splashes against the stone floor, staining it darker. The scent of sweetness and sweat blends with incense until every breath tastes like rot disguised as perfume. Would you eat? Would you lift a goblet that looks like coagulated blood, laughing along, pretending not to taste fear under the honey, or would you push it away, admit the unease crawling down your throat? The irony stings. Rome calls itself rational, pragmatic, above superstition. Yet here sit Romans, drunk and pale, frightened of shadows that leap like ghosts across the walls. They do not fear your armies, they fear the atmosphere you spin like thread. The motif tightens, banqueter's will, banqueter's funeral, every course another rehearsal for death. A roasted goose stuffed with dates arrives, its skin carved with hieroglyphs that read like prayers. Guests clap nervously, chewing until their lips smear with grease, their fingers sticky, their laughter frantic. Antony leans close, whispering too loudly. You terrify them. You smile. I only remind them of the truth, because what is power if not shaping fear into spectacle? The torches sputter, shadows lunging across painted gods, faces stretch and warp. A priest watching from the corner mutters about disrespect. You raise your goblet, cutting him off. The gods dine with us, you say, your voice calm but sharp enough to slice through the air. No one argues. The music swells, still minor, still aching. Guests slump lower, eyelids heavy, wine tugging them towards stupor. Some begin to murmur about visions a mother's voice, a soldier's scream, a child's laughter echoing where no children play. They laugh it off, but unease spreads faster than wine. You watch Antony. He plays along, boasting, toasting, pretending command. Yet even he glances at the walls, unsettled by shadows shaped too much like spears. He drinks deeper. He laughs louder. His desperation to drown fear becomes clearer than any declaration. Would you shout into the dark, hoping noise chases silence, or would you sit quietly? Admit the weight pressing your chest as the night deepens. You order one final act. Servants extinguish half the torches. The room plunges into near darkness. Gasps ripple. Only a few flames remain, flickering weakly, shadows ballooning to monstrous size. In the near dark, everyone looks half dead already. You let silence linger. Let them feel breath against their necks that isn't there. Let them hear footsteps that never cross the floor. Then you raise your goblet. Drink. You command softly, and remember that tomorrow is not promised. They obey. Some with laughter, some with trembling hands. The wine burns, the incense claws, the dark presses. In that moment, every guest knows the truth. They are not in a club of immortals. They are rehearsing their own demise, and you are both priestess and queen. The motif concludes. Banquets are no longer wills disguised as parties. Tonight, banquets become funerals disguised as revelry. Every toast a prayer, or every laugh a dirge, every drop of wine a preparation for the silence that will one day swallow them whole. And when the last torch gutters, when the hall reeks of sweat, smoke, and spilled blood-coloured wine, you rise. You do not stumble. You do not slur. You walk out steady, the only figure unbroken. Antony staggers behind you, drunk and hollow-eyed, clutching at the illusion that laughter will save him. The guests whisper, shaken, some swearing they saw ghosts. You smile faintly into the night air. Because you know the truth, shadows are more powerful than armies, and tonight, you fed Rome's bravest men to shadows until they quivered like children. The feasts of shadows fade, but their echoes cling to you like smoke. Alexandria still glitters, still sways with music, but under its marble skin something sharp presses forward. War, no longer rumour, now gathers like thunder offshore. Octavian sharpens his image in Rome, painting you as a witch who bewitched a once great general. His words march faster than his legions, crossing seas, slipping into every senator's ear. You are no longer a queen in their mouths. You are an infection, a spectacle, the excuse for war. And so Actium looms. The preparations begin in silent ships pulled to harbour, sails mended, oars inspected, bronze rams polished until they shine like cruel smiles. The Nile smells of tar, pitch, sweat, fish. Even the gulls cry harsher, as if they sense blood in the water. You stand on the docks, watching your fleet take shape. Once the Nile carried barges perfumed with cinnamon. Now it carries warships painted black, shadows floating before the storm. The motif mutates again, oil lamps before the storm. Every light flickers against bronze, against shields, as though even fire hesitates to burn steadily. Antony walks the decks with forced bravado, barking orders, his armour polished, his gestures broad. He clings to his Roman general's mask, but you see the cracks, the tremor in his hand when he lifts a goblet, the too quick laugh when someone questions the odds. He has lost more than battles. He has lost certainty. You know this storm will not be fought only with ships. It will be fought with images. Octavian has already won half the battle by painting you both as grotesque. And yet, here on the Nile, you still command theatre. You order sails dyed deep purple, ships carved with golden prows. If Rome wishes to call you excessive, you will weaponize excess itself. Better to be feared for decadence than ignored for modesty. Would you, in their place, march humbly into war, or would you paint your sails brighter, hoping fear itself blinds your enemy? Night before departure, the harbour silent but restless. Soldiers lie on decks, staring at stars, trying to read their fates in the glitter. You recline in your cabin, torchlight trembling, the air thick with the smell of oil, sweat, seaweed. The silence presses heavier than any feast. You imagine Octavian across the sea, his scribes sharpening words as his smiths sharpen swords. The wind rattles the rigging. It sounds like chains. Antony visits you, armour loosened, hair damp with salt air. He tries a smile, but it falters. He confesses he dreams of Rome, of Octavius' children asking why he left. He dreams of Octavian's face, smug, boyish, pitiless. You listen, steady, your hand resting on silk that still carries faint stains of wine. You tell him tomorrow the storm decides everything. He nods, but his eyes do not believe. The motif whispers oil lamps before the storm, every flame small, vulnerable, as though mocking the arrogance of fleets. At dawn, the sea unfurls, gulls wheel above, their cries sharp, sails snap, oars dip. Your ships stretch like a dark wall across water, prows gleaming, the horizon bruises with clouds, thunder rolling faintly, soldiers tighten grips on spears, priests mutter blessings drowned by wind, and then you see Octavian's fleet, disciplined, ruthless, sails pale, formation perfect, where your fleet dazzles with gold and purple, his glares with order, excess versus austerity, theatre versus strategy. Which wins would you bet on spectacle or discipline? Which frightens more, a fleet dressed like gods, or a fleet moving like one body? The first clash comes with thunder and wood screaming. Bronze rams splinter hulls. Men shout, steel ringing, arrows raining. The sea turns into an echo chamber of death splash, scream, clash, roar. Smoke rises where fire arrows catch. The scent of burning tar mixes with salt until breathing feels like swallowing knives. You stand on your deck, veils whipping, watching chaos. Antony's flagship surges forward, his voice bellowing commands lost in storm. For a heartbeat, you believe. Perhaps Rome can still falter. Perhaps Egypt can still terrify. But then discipline presses against chaos. Octavian ships move in patterns, like hunters circling prey. Your fleet, dazzling but divided, falters. One ship breaks formation, then another. The purple sails look beautiful until they burn. The motif strains oil lamps before the storm. Now, lamps sputter in wind, some extinguish. Antony looks to you, desperation in his eyes. He needs salvation, not strategy. He needs theatre, not tactics. And you, heart-hammering, know the truth this storm cannot be won. What do you do when spectacle no longer blinds? When discipline pierces glamour? Do you burn with your fleet, or withdraw? Save the symbol even if the empire dies? The answer coils inside you, cold as poison. You signal retreat, your flagship turns, purple sails snapping, soldiers gasp, shout, curse. Antony hesitates, then follows. Behind, the fleet shatters, Men swallowed by sea, smoke curling skyward like funeral incense. The storm closes. Not thunder, not sea, history itself. That night, you lie awake. The lamps burn low, oil sputtering. The motif returns one last time, lamps before the storm. But now the storm has passed. Lamps gutter. Darkness presses. Antony drinks until he collapses. You sit steady, eyes open, listening to silence heavier than thunder, and you understand Actium was not just a battle, it was prophecy. Excess can dazzle, but discipline devours. And in Rome's story, you are already dead even as your heart still beats. The storm does not end when the sails drop. It follows you back to shore, curling inside your chest, filling the halls of Alexandria with silence too heavy for marble to carry. Actium is not just a defeat, it is a verdict, and you can feel the sentence written in every hushed corridor, in every soldier's downcast eyes. News arrives faster than you think possible. Survivors stumble ashore, armor blackened with soot, eyes wide, words tumbling out like drowning men gasping for air. Fires on the water, Roman formations cutting like knives, comrades screaming, swallowed by sea. Their voices tremble. They repeat the same detailed sails burning purple against the sky, ships cracking, men sinking with curses still in their throats. You close your eyes. You see it anyway. You hear the creak of timbers as they splinter, the crash of waves filling broken hulls, the choking sputter of men gulping salt. You smell pitch, smoke, charred wood. The sea does not forgive. The sea swallows. The motif mutates again, not lamps before the storm, but water swallowing fire. Every spark of theatre drowned, every torch hissed into silence. Antony tries to rally, but his face betrays him. He laughs too loud, voice hoarse, wine dribbling down his beard. It was a setback, he insists, slamming a cup down so hard it cracks. We'll rebuild, we'll march on land, but no one believes him. Soldiers avoid his eyes, courtiers whisper behind his back. Octavian's shadow stretches longer every hour, until even torches flicker smaller, dimmer. Would you believe a man who drowned his discipline in drink? Would you place your survival in hands that tremble more from shame than from battle? The irony thickens. Antony, the once great Roman general, now hides in your palace like a child hiding from thunder. His pride collapses faster than walls under siege. He does not see the truth. You see Rome has already decided. Actium was not just a battle lost, it was narrative sealed. Octavian has won the story. The city knows. Alexandria, once buzzing with laughter, now moves like a funeral procession. Market stalls half empty. Fishermen muttering of omens. Priests tightening rituals as if ropes could tie back fate. The smell of incense thickens at every corner. Prayers smearing the air with desperation. Even the Nile flows heavy, sluggish, as though mourning. At night, the palace echoes with Antony's voice. He paces, shouts at shadows, curses Octavian, curses fate, curses even the sea. Sometimes he breaks into laughter, manic and sharp, before collapsing into silence. You watch him, sometimes with pity, sometimes with anger. He was supposed to be Rome's iron spine. Now he bends, fragile as papyrus, and you what of you? You move through halls where marble chills your bare feet, where torches hiss low. You feel the walls leaning closer, pressing with silence. The rooms that once rang with music now echo only with your breath. Every doorway feels like a mouth ready to swallow. Every corridor stretches longer, darker. The motif flickers, water swallowing fire. You hear it even here, away from the sea. The memory of drowning torches lingers in your ears. You smell salt in your bedchamber, though no waves touch the stone. The defeat clings like dampness, like mildew that will not scrub away. Would you, if given the chance, flee abandoned palace, abandoned throne, vanish into desert or mountain, start again as someone anonymous, or would you stay, queen, until the end? Playing role after role until the curtain finally falls, Antony does not ask such questions. He drinks. He mutters. He touches his sword in silence, not with purpose but with unease. You see the edge dulling, the steel losing its shine as if it mirrors his spirit. One evening, a storm breaks over the city, not battle rain. Thunder crashes, Lightning splits the sky. The palace windows rattle. Water pours through streets, flooding alleys, soaking sandals. The torches hiss as rain lashes them, shadows crawling madly across walls. You stand on the balcony, rain streaking your face, your robe plastered to your skin. The Nile churns, swollen, furious. For a moment you feel as if the sea itself has followed you inland, dragging Actium into your courtyard. Antony stumbles beside you, soaked, swearing, lifting his goblet though rain dilutes the wine. His laughter rings hollow against thunder. The city below glimmers with water, fires drowned. The motif sharpens, water always wins. Against torch, against pride, against empire. Later, in quieter hours, you walk alone through the temple of Isis. Priests chant low, their incense bitter, smoke curling into statues' cold eyes. You kneel, not in worship but in calculation. What is left to command ships broken, soldiers scattered, Rome's narrative turning you into villain. You whisper, not for salvation but for clarity. If death comes, it must be yours to command, not theirs to choreograph. The thought settles cold but steady. You cannot control Octavian's story, but you can control your final act. The poison lab returns to memory. The asp myth begins to coil, half-formed, waiting, death as makeup, as pageant, as resistance, as would you fear it. The idea of ending on your terms, rather than watching Rome drag you in chains, or would you take comfort in the symmetry? The queen who ruled her life also ruled her exit. The storm passes, streets dry, but the city does not recover. The whispers grow louder. Rome advances closer. Each sunrise feels thinner, weaker, as though daylight itself resents shining here. You watch Antony crumble, and you feel the weight press heavier. Yet you stand straighter, sharper, because someone must, and because the truth has already chosen you as its mirror. Defeat at sea was not just the loss of ships, it was the loss of illusion. Theatre drowns, armies sink, pride burns away. What remains is only you, steady in the silence, already rehearsing the end. Antony is not dead, not yet, but in every hall, in every corridor, the silence carries him as if he were already a ghost. The soldiers know it, the merchants know it, even the servants who avoid his drunken rages know it. Rome has won. What sits in your palace is no longer a general. What sits beside you on the couch is a ruin wearing a man's body. So the throne becomes yours alone. At dawn, you rise before torches gutter out. The marble under your bare feet feels colder than ever, as though the palace itself recoils. The city beyond the walls moves slower, quieter, its markets stripped thin, its temples swollen with prayers that taste of ash. You walk through it, veils dragging like smoke, attendants following in silence. Every eye that dares to look at you sees not Cleopatra the triumphant, not Cleopatra the goddess of the Nile, but Cleopatra the widow in waiting, widow of a man still alive, widow of an empire already collapsing. The motif returns, transformed the throne not as seat of power, but as a chair at a wake. You sit in the audience chamber. The gold still gleams, the mosaics still catch light, but nothing shines the way it did. Petitioners arrive with hollow voices, their words stripped of hope. Grain shipments delayed, Rome cutting trade, priests begging for coin to keep rituals alive. Their words fall like sand, slipping through your hands. You nod, you answer, you promise. But you feel the hollowness inside each syllable. Would you, if you were here, feel the throne comfort you or crush you? Would you taste its gold as sweetness, or as iron shackles biting your wrists? Antony lingers nearby sometimes, but he is no anchor. He paces, mutters, lashes out, then collapses into drink. His hands shake, his eyes glaze. You feel yourself ruling not with him, not even against him, but in spite of him. The throne you share is no longer a partnership, it is a widow's vigil. At night, when the city grows too quiet, you return to your private rooms. There, torches spit smoke against frescoed walls, their light too weak to chase shadows. The air smells of dust and old incense. You recline on cushions, silk cold against your skin. You remember when this palace rang with music, when excess felt like theatre, When laughter drowned fear, now laughter would sound obscene. You sit in silence, hearing only the faint shuffle of guards outside, the soft hiss of flame. The motif sharpens the throne as a coffin, and you as both queen and mourner. You cannot stop memory from bleeding in. The desert mirage, the pearl dissolving in vinegar, the banquets where Antony boomed with laughter, when soldiers leaned too close, wine dripping from their beards. They are ghosts now, flickering at the edge of your sight. You wonder if you imagined them, or if history is already erasing them. Rome sharpens its story. Rumours coil through the streets. Octavian marches closer, his scribes busier than his soldiers. They say Antony is a drunk, a coward, bewitched by you. They say you are a whore, a sorceress, a plague. They say Egypt bleeds itself dry to feed your vanity. And though you know the words are lies, you also know lies are Rome's sharpest blades. Would you fight them, shout the truth until your throat bled, or would you sit silent, let the lies drown you, knowing resistance only feeds their hunger? The throne offers no answer. It sits heavy, gold catching light that no longer warms. You sit, steady, spine straight, eyes unblinking. The courtiers watch, some fawn, some whisper, some wait for you to stumble. You give them nothing. You give them silence sharper than any speech. One evening, Antony storms in, armour strapped on crooked sword clanging. He shouts for soldiers. He claims he will march, reclaim glory, but his words slur, his steps wobble. You watch him collapse into the throne beside you, sweat dripping, wine staining his lips. The image is grotesque, two rulers side by side, but only one alive. The courtiers avert their eyes, the petitioners shuffle. You sit taller, veils falling smooth, face calm. Widowhood becomes your armour. The throne may be coffin, but you will not let them see you buried yet. At night, you pace the temple again. The priests whisper prayers over smoking bowls. You do not kneel, you do not ask for rescue. You study the hieroglyphs instead, their carved lines sharp, their gods unblinking. They outlast kings, they outlast queens, they will outlast you. You wonder, briefly, if that is comfort or cruelty. The motif thickens the throne as a reminder that everything gilded turns to dust. You run your fingers over the stone, cool, rough, real. More real than Antony's trembling hands, more real than Rome's words. Stone does not lie. Would you feel small here, kneeling under gods that do not bend, or would you feel strangely free, knowing your power was always temporary, that survival was never guaranteed? The widow's throne becomes habit, day after day. You sit, hearing voices hollow with fear, night after night. You recline, hearing silence heavy with ghosts. Antony fades further. His laughter turns brittle, his temper shorter. Sometimes you see him staring at the floor as though expecting it to open. Sometimes you see him asleep with goblet still in hand, lips moving with dreams you cannot hear, and you sharpen your silence. You let your presence become weapon. If Rome paints you as witch, you let the image grow. If they call you whore, you sit taller, your coal-lined eyes colder. If they call you plague, you make their voices falter when they meet your gaze. Widowhood becomes stagecraft. The coffin throne becomes theatre, but alone, in the deepest hours, you cannot keep the mask. You lie on cold silk, eyes open, staring at ceilings painted with stars. The stars do not move, the silence presses. You feel the widow's weight not as crown, but as stone on your chest. You breathe shallow, afraid breath itself might break. The motif whispers the throne is coffin, but also mirror. You see yourself reflected in its gold, in its weight, in its silence. Not a queen, not a sorceress, not even a lover, a widow, still alive, but already rehearsing death. And in that mirror you glimpse the final truth. Antony may still draw breath, but you have already inherited his emptiness, his empire, his ruin. You sit not beside him, but above him, already writing the ending he cannot face. Antony does not fall in battle. He falls in silence, in shadow, in rooms that once smelled of incense and wine and now reek of sweat and despair. Rome loves to say he died a soldier, but you know better. He died long before his sword slipped from his grip. The rumours arrive first. Octavian's fleet tightens its hold, his legions edging closer. In Alexandria, whispers spread like mould. Antony has lost his last loyal commanders. Antony cannot feed his soldiers. Antony has abandoned his own honour. You hear them echo in marble halls, on market steps, even in temple courtyards where incense curls like surrender. The throne is colder than ever. Antony sits beside you sometimes, pale, haggard, muttering to himself. Other times he vanishes for days, hidden in rooms where servants hear shouts, sobs, crashes. You stop asking. His decline is a river flowing too fast to dam. And then the day comes when rumour sharpens into blade. Word reaches him, false, perhaps, or planted by Octavian, that you've betrayed him, that you have already taken your life to avoid capture. He believes it, or perhaps he chooses to believe it, because it frees him from facing the mirror. He draws his sword, not on Octavian, on himself. The news rushes to you. Antony is bleeding, collapsed, calling for you. You feel the world tilt. For all your irony, for all your sarcasm, the words slice deeper than any Roman insult. He has chosen to die not in war, not even in dignity, but in despair, and he calls for you. You run through corridors, silk clinging to your skin, sandals slapping marble. The air smells of iron, heavy, metallic. When you reach him, the sight freezes you. Antony sprawled on the floor, armour askew, his sword fallen beside him. Blood pools, dark and spreading, staining his robe, his hands slick, his face is ashen, his eyes half closed, lips trembling. He looks less like a general than a child caught in a storm. The motif shifts blood on silk, his lifeblood soaking the same fabric that once wrapped feasts, that once glittered with theatre. Now silk drinks only death. You kneel beside him, your hands pressing against wounds too wide to close. The blood is hot, sticky, slippery. It smears your arms, your veil, your lips when you lean close. He tries to speak, but only coughs red. His breath rattles, shallow, uneven. Would you weep? Would you scream? Or would you hold his gaze steady, refusing to let him see fear in your eyes? You whisper to him. You tell him you are alive, that you did not betray him, that you are here, that he is not alone. His eyes widen, searching yours, disbelief and hope colliding. For a moment, just one, he smiles, a faint, broken smile, blood glistening at his teeth. Then the weight of him slumps heavier in your arms. Servants hover, trembling, afraid to approach. The chamber smells of copper and smoke from torches sputtering too low. You press your forehead to his, feeling his skin grow colder. You whisper again, but words slip useless into air. His chest rises once, twice, then stills. The silence is total. Even the torches seem to hush. Blood stains your silk gown, dripping onto marble, tracing lines like broken hieroglyphs across the floor. You sit frozen, Antony's head in your lap, his sword lying dull beside him. For all his noise, all his boasts, he ends in silence. Rome will call it cowardice. They will write him as weak, bewitched, ruined. They will erase the man who once commanded legions, replace him with caricature. But you, sitting in blood-soaked silk, know the truth. Antony's death is not only his own, it is the death of empire's illusion, the end of theatre. Would you see this as mercy, that his torment ended or as betrayal? That he left you to carry ruin alone? The motif burns brighter blood on silk. It clings, it stains, it refuses to wash out. You know already this image will never leave you. The city wails when word spreads. Priests chant longer, incense choking. Soldiers mutter, some weeping, others cursing. Merchants pack goods, ready to flee. The people know Rome's victory is now inevitable. A queen without her Roman general is a flame without oil. You retreat to your chamber, Antony's blood still drying on your gown. You do not change it. You let it stiffen, darken, cling. You recline on cushions that smell of iron, staring at torchlight flickering on walls. The sound of Antony's last breath repeats in your ears, over and over, until silence itself becomes unbearable. Would you sleep, if you could, In that gown would you close your eyes knowing his ghost lies heavy on your chest? The night grows long. The Nile flows outside, black and wide, indifferent. The palace seems emptier than ever. No laughter, no shouts, no footsteps. Just you, blood on silk, waiting. And in that waiting, you understand Antony's death is not only loss, it is inheritance. You inherit his ruin, his shame, his enemies. You inherit the weight of a story Rome already writes. Widow's throne is no longer metaphor. It is reality. You're alone. But alone, you are sharper. Alone, you are still queen. And alone, you will decide your end. The motif settles, heavy and final blood on silk, a lover's death in your arms, a general silence pressed into your chest, a queen's resolve sharpening in grief. The palace has never been so quiet, not even during nights of fasting, not even during storms that rattled the shutters until dawn. Now, after Antony's death, silence lies like a second skin over every wall. Servants step softer, courtiers murmur less. The air tastes like incense that has burned too long cloying, stale, heavy with endings. You sit alone. His blood still stains your silk, though days have passed. You do not wash it. The crimson has darkened to brown, stiff where fabric once flowed. Every fold whispers memory his weight in your arms, his last rattle of breath, the way his lips trembled as they searched for words. The motif hardens silk as shroud. Rome sharpens its knives. Octavian's legions press closer, his emissaries sending words dressed as offers but weighted as threats. They promise mercy if you surrender. They promise dignity if you parade in chains. You know what mercy means in Rome. A cage, a crowd, a jeering spectacle. You, Cleopatra, dragged through streets as trophy, as monster. The thought burns worse than poison. So you begin to plan. Each night, by torchlight, you summon scribes, not to draft treaties, to draft goodbyes. You dictate letters that shimmer with control, letters that make surrender look like choice. You write to friends who may never receive your words. You write to enemies who will never believe them. You write to children whose futures already twist under Rome's shadow. Every syllable drips with calculation. Even grief is staged. Would you, if you knew death loomed, spend your last hours writing, or would you burn the scrolls, laugh at the futility, and drink until memory blurred? You do neither. You write, because words are armor. If Octavian conquers your body, let your words outlive him. Then the poison returns, not as rumor, not as metaphor, as practice. You visit the old lab, hidden in palace depths where stone sweats damp and torches flicker faintly. The air smells of herbs, of rot, of sharp minerals that sting your nose. Shelves still line the walls, jars sealed with wax, powders labelled with steady hands. Once, you tested on prisoners. Once, you calculated which death suited which enemy. Now you calculate only your own. The motif mutates the chalice's mirror. You peer into glass vials, seeing your own eyes shimmer back, lined with coal, rimmed with fatigue. You test carefully. A scratch on your arm to watch the sting, a drop on your tongue to taste the numbness. You observe, record, dismiss. Some too slow, some too grotesque. Some strip dignity with convulsions, with screams. You will not give Octavian that theatre. You will script your own. Servants whisper, terrified. They watch you carry vials into your chamber. They watch you recline among silks already stiff with blood. They do not stop you. Perhaps they, too, fear the cage more than the grave. Would you envy them, servants with no choices beyond obedience, or would you pity them, condemned to live while you choose to end nights lengthen? Octavian's banners glimmer closer, eagle standards cutting the horizon. Rumour says he is already boasting in Rome of your capture, your humiliation. You feel time thinning, days peeling away. So you turn your planning into ritual. You eat sparingly, savouring every taste honey, figs, bread with sesame. You bathe in perfumes stronger than ever, until even the walls smell of roses, of myrrh, of cinnamon smoke. You line your eyes in coal thicker, sharper, darker, as if blades could be painted. You drape yourself in robes brighter than blood. Death will come, but not to a queen diminished. The motif glitters eyeliner sharper than swords. At dusk, you gather your attendants. Loyal women, trembling but steady. You speak softly, voice smooth, measured. You tell them the truth without tears, that you will not be paraded, that you will not live Rome's script. You tell them they may leave, or they may stay. They kneel, vowing silence, vowing to stand with you. Their eyes shimmer in torchlight, wet but resolved. And then, in the deepest hours, when Alexandria sleeps uneasily, you rehearse, you lift a vial, you study it against lamplight. The liquid glows faintly, thick as resin. You imagine swallowing. You imagine warmth at first, then stillness spreading, like river water seeping into every vein. You imagine silence not of defeat, but of choice. Would you fear the darkness, or would you welcome it as escape? Would you tremble at the unknown, or sigh at the relief of an ending you authored yourself? Antony's ghost lingers. In quiet, you feel him beside you. You hear echoes of his laugh, the weight of his hand. But where he chose despair, you choose design. Where he collapsed, you calculate. Where he bled uncontrolled, you will let no one see you undone. Rome thinks it will bury you. You plan to bury Rome, not with armies, not with ships, but with a final image Cleopatra, queen to the last, eyes lined like daggers, lips calm as marble, death in her hand and not in theirs. The motif closes around you, the chalice as mirror. You see not poison, you see sovereignty. One evening, Octavian's messenger arrives. He bows low, rehearsed, oily. He offers once more mercy, spectacle, chains. You smile faintly, eyes steady, words measured. You tell him you will consider. You dismiss him with dignity so sharp he dares not meet your gaze. He leaves, shaken, already certain you are plotting, and he is right. When the doors close, you sit back on the throne, widow's throne, coffin throne, and yet, for the first time since Actium, you feel control. Death is not defeat, death is stage, death is legacy. Would you smile, sitting there, knowing your story is already sharpening into myth? Or would you mourn, knowing no one will ever see the truth behind the silk and poison? You do not mourn. You prepare. The night deepens. The Nile whispers outside, wide and endless. Torches sputter low, shadows stretching. You hold the vial steady, its weight light but infinite. Tomorrow, perhaps, tomorrow, the curtain falls. Tonight, you breathe, steady, calm. The chalice gleams. The mirror smiles back, and for once, you sleep. The vial waits on your table, gleaming like captured moonlight. Yet even as you hold it, rumours slither into your chamber. They whisper of another ending an asp, coiled in a basket of figs, fangs sharp as needles, venom quick as fire. You almost laugh. Which story is yours, the chalice in your hand, or the snake at your feet? The motif twists truth slipping through fingers. You walk the corridors, hearing servants whisper behind doors. Some swear you're already plotting to charm a serpent, others mutter of poisons brewed in secret. Even the priests disagree. The asp is sacred to Isis. One insists. No queen would waste divinity on a vial. Another counters poison grants control. Snakes serve chaos. Their voices circle like flies, buzzing without end, and outside, Rome sharpens the myth before you're even gone. Octavian's scribes debate how you will die, as if the script were theirs to pen. A woman undone by lust, by sorcery, by snakebite. None of them imagine you sitting here, alive, considering every option with a steady hand. Would you rage, hearing them argue over your death as if you were already corpse, or would you smirk, knowing the uncertainty is the weapon you leave behind at dusk? You summon your attendants. They bring baskets of fruit, figs plump and sweet. You study them, half expecting coils, scales, the glitter of eyes. The air smells ripe, sticky with sugar. You sink your fingers into soft flesh, juice slicking your palm. No snake, only fruit. You bite slowly, tasting sweetness tinged with irony. If history wants a serpent, let them imagine one. The motif shivers figs heavy, secrets hidden in their skins. In the old laboratory, the debate grows sharper. You test another vial, A single drop numbs your tongue, tingling sharp, then dull. You imagine the spread through veins, through lungs, to heart, slow, yes, but elegant. Dignity preserved. No convulsions, no foam, no grotesque spasm, just silence. But the snake, the priest's whisper, offers swiftness. 2 punctures, a bloom of pain, then dark sleep. Sacred, dramatic, impossible to mistake. A queen claimed by symbol, not by glass. Which death feels truer? Which death feels yours? You pace your chamber, torchlight flickering against polished stone. You imagine the basket woven reeds, figs piled high, serpent hidden beneath. You imagine its scales sliding against fruit, its hiss faint, its strike sudden. The image is theatre exactly what Rome craves, yet also what Egypt understands. Serpents guard tombs, serpents crown gods. Still, the vial gleams on your table, its liquid whispers calm, precise, yours. The motif splits asp or chalice, snake or glass. Theatre or control? Would you fear the bite, the pain quick and hot, or would you fear poison's patience, the minutes stretching too long, the silence too heavy? Your attendants avoid your gaze. They know you are rehearsing, weighing endings as carefully as generals weigh battles. Some pray for you to choose snake, others pray you will drink, none dare ask. At night, Antony's ghost returns. He leans at the edge of your bed, armor rusted, lips still red with blood. He laughs bitterly. They will never give you the truth. Choose whichever lie cuts deepest. You turn away, but his words echo. History is already burying you twice, and so you test again. Another vial, another taste. This one burns, throat raw, eyes watering, too violent. You set it aside. Another numbs your lips but leaves dizziness crawling too long. Unworthy. You keep searching, steady, calm, relentless. Would you, in this chamber, surrounded by silence and torches sputtering low, feel horror at your own obsession or relief that death could become design, as exact as eyeliner drawn sharp at dawn days blur? Octavian draws closer, his messengers press harder. The people outside grow restless, frightened. Whispers turn to certainty. The queen is already gone. She hides with snakes. She drinks poison daily. They speak of you as myth already, and do you resent it or savour it, knowing myth is stronger than fact? One evening, storm clouds choke the sky. Rain lashes the windows. Thunder shakes the halls. You sit by lamplight, the vial in your hand, when a servant bursts in with news Octavian has promised Rome that Cleopatra will be displayed alive. Alive. Caged. Humiliated. The word strikes harder than thunder. Alive. To them, worse than dead. Your decision sharpens. Poison offers control, invisible, steady. The asp offers spectacle, visible, sacred. Both deny him his theatre. Both make death yours. Would you laugh, knowing the real horror is not dying but being seen alive in chains? The motif binds asp or chalice, but never chains. That night, you dream. In the dream, figs split open, bleeding sweet juice and hissing venom. The asp slithers, coiling around your wrist, eyes glimmering. In the dream, the chalice tips, liquid glows like molten gold, spilling into your veins. Both deaths embrace you. Both deaths whisper your name. You wake calm. The choice is still yours. Perhaps it will always be. Perhaps the choice is not even between snake and poison, but between truth and myth, between control and story. And you smile, faintly, ironically, because maybe the real victory is leaving history uncertain. Leaving Rome to argue forever over what killed you. Leaving Octavian's triumph smeared with doubt. Would you savour that even in death, you control the question, you close your eyes, you picture the asp's fangs, you picture the chalice's gleam, you breathe deep, you feel calm. The torch sputters low, truth slips away, but choice remains. The motif closes soft, truth never fixed, only flickering. Snake or poison, glass or fang, your ending is not theirs. It is yours, and that is enough. Octavian does not kill you with sword or spear. He kills you with ink, Long before your body cools, his scribes sharpen their pens. Rome does not care what you chose: asp, poison, chalice, fig. Rome will decide for you, and Rome's version will live longer than any scar, any tomb. The motif mutates the pen as blade. You can almost hear them already, scratching parchment by torchlight. They write of a queen undone by lust, bewitched by her own beauty, incapable of strategy, incapable of thought beyond seduction. They reduce you to curves and eyeliner, to whispers in bedrooms, to poisoned kisses. They write Antony as tragic but weak, a hero ruined by witchcraft. They write themselves as saviours. Would you rage, if you could, hearing your life carved into caricature, or would you smirk, knowing that every lie they tell proves they feared the truth? In Alexandria, silence lingers. Your attendants weep softly, your people mourn in whispers, but even here, rumours grow twisted. Merchants repeat Roman slogans, priests repeat Roman prayers. A cage never needed bars, it needed only stories. Octavian knows this well. He parades through streets, not dragging your corpse, but dragging your memory. Cleopatra the harlot, Cleopatra the witch, Cleopatra the serpent who poisoned Antony's honour. His voice rings sharper than iron. Crowds cheer because they are told to cheer. In Rome, his words echo even louder. The motif slashes ink, dripping like blood. Would you laugh? Seeing your empire conquered not by swords but by pamphlets, Octavian paints himself pure. He is the chaste avenger, the righteous Roman who rescued a nation from a monster's grip. He lifts his sister Octavia, a symbol of virtue, contrasting her against you loyal wife, obedient Roman matron, Octavia, the foil to Cleopatra, whose every breath Rome calls scandal. You taste bile even in death. You see the game clearly. He cannot kill you without resurrecting you, so he makes you grotesque. He buries you twice, once in your tomb, once in his story. The motif bruises the pen, stabbing deeper than the asp ever could. In quiet moments, you wonder which version will the world remember. The queen who spoke 9 languages, who commanded fleets, who negotiated with emperors, or the sorceress, the seductress, the shame of Rome. The latter is easier to swallow, and the world loves easy. Would you despair, knowing truth bends so easily, or would you take comfort? That myth, too, is power you still command. Even if twisted Octavian builds monuments not of stone but of narrative. He has coins minted with his face, speeches carved into marble, scrolls dispatched across provinces. Each word hammers your coffin tighter, each phrase smothers your complexity. Cleopatra becomes not woman, not queen, not strategist, but archetype, and the archetype is convenient. It warns Roman women to obey, or risk becoming Cleopatra. It warns Roman men to stay virtuous, or risk Antony's ruin. It gives Rome a villain they can never resurrect, a cautionary tale painted with eyeliner and venom. The motif carves eyeliner darker than truth, but even Octavian cannot control everything. Whispers linger at edges. Soldiers who fought under Antony remember your command, your voice, your sharp mind. Traders who bargained with you recall precision, calculation, wit. Priests still mutter prayers that your spirit guides the Nile. The truth flickers, faint, fragile. Would you cling to those whispers? If you were still here, would you trust them to outlast Octavian's thunder in Rome? They stage plays. Cleopatra appears draped in gauze, hissing, clutching snakes, shrieking spells. Antony staggers, bewitched, undone. The audience laughs, jeers, applauds. They do not know you. They know theatre. They know Octavian's script. Your ghost hovers in the rafters, watching. You smile thinly. Theatre was always your weapon too. Let them parody. Even parody sustains your name. Even mockery ensures remembrance. The motif smoulders laughter sharper than swords. Octavian rewrites Antony too. He is tragic, yes, but more importantly, a warning the strongest general destroyed by lust, by weakness, by foreign witchcraft. Romans nod. They tell themselves it could never be us. We are stronger. And in believing it, they let Octavian crown himself master. The irony cuts deep. Antony dies. You die. And Octavian rises not because he was braver, not because he was stronger, but because he told the better story. Would you call that victory or theft? Years blur. Rome swells under his rule, temples rise, coins gleam, banners snap, and every banner bears his truth: Cleopatra as shame, Octavian as saviour. Generations grow repeating it. Children learn it before they learn their prayers. Yet something strange happens. The darker the story, the brighter your shadow grows. They call you villain, but they cannot forget you. They smear your name, but they cannot erase it. They fear your ghost, but they keep summoning it. The motif flickers your shadow as monument. Octavian's rewrite succeeds, but in success, it betrays itself. For no Roman matron's name echoes through centuries. No obedient sister lives in memory. Only you, the witch, the whore, the queen survives in story. Would you laugh at that? Softly. As you drift into eternal sleep, your ending remains blurred. Asp or poison, chalice or fang. Rome debates. Scholars argue. Poets invent. They bury you under lies, yet cannot agree which lie to choose. Octavian wanted certainty. You left only questions. And questions last longer than statues. The motif closes truth as riddle. And somewhere, beyond parchment and torchlight, beyond Rome's marble and propaganda, your voice still whispers. A queen's voice, bitter, amused, unbroken. They can write what they please. They can smear, distort, condemn. But they cannot silence the whisper in every curious ear. What if the story was wrong and that whisper is the lullaby? Because tonight, lying in safety centuries later, the listener breathes easy. Rome's lies cannot touch them. Cleopatra's distortion cannot harm them. The world is cruel, history crueler, but here, in quiet, in dark, they are free to close their eyes. Your body is gone, your tomb lost, your empire folded into Rome's shadow, but your story does not stay buried. It mutates, it grows, it slips across centuries like incense smoke curling through broken stone. At first, Rome carries the script. Cleopatra, the seductress, the witch, the shame of Antony. Their poets recite it, their teachers repeat it, their coins imply it. But stories are strange things. Once set loose, they no longer belong to those who penned them. They wander, they evolve, and soon you become something. Octavian never planned immortal. The motif shifts eyeliner sharper than memory. In medieval halls, monks whisper of you while copying scrolls by candlelight. Their quills scratch fast, distorting even further Cleopatra as cautionary tale of lust, of womanly weakness, of pagan corruption. They tuck you into sermons alongside Eve, Jezebel, Salome, always the woman who tempts, the woman who falls. Would you fume, knowing their ink erased your languages, your armies, your treaties, or would you chuckle darkly, seeing your shadow stitched into their Bible lessons? Centuries pass in Italy. Renaissance painters resurrect you, but they do not paint scrolls or ships. They paint silk falling from pale shoulders, snakes coiling across bare skin. Your death becomes spectacle, sensual and grotesque, a tableau of flesh and venom. Patrons nod, whispering about sin, even as their eyes linger too long on painted curves. The motif curls snake as ornament, not weapon. Shakespeare arrives next, and with him, theatre's spotlight. He writes you into poetry, the barge she sat in, like a burnished throne, burned on the water. He gifts you words you never spoke, sighs you never sighed. He lifts Antony into tragic nobility, you into intoxicating ruin. Audiences swoon, cry, gasp. They leave theatres whispering of your grandeur, your downfall, your kiss of death. You are now less woman than role, a mask actors slip on night after night. Would you take offence, watching strangers mouth your ghost into rhymes, or would you savour it? That long after Octavian turned to dust. The world still chants your name in applause. The motif glimmers, applause louder than history. In the 19th century, opera houses roar. Sopranos belt your cries. Orchestras thunder your storms. Your love with Antony becomes aria, duet, crescendo. Velvet curtains rise and fall. Crowds clap. Roses scatter across stage. You are tragedy made music. ruin set to symphony. Empires rise and fall outside, but inside, you are eternal melody. Would you smile at that? Your death turned to song, then Hollywood lights ignite. Cameras roll. Cleopatra in shimmering costumes. Eyes lined darker than night, lips crimson, dresses trailing like rivers of silk. Claudette Colbert, Vivian Leigh, Elizabeth Taylor each takes your face, your throne, your crown. Their Cleopatras are exotic temptress, doomed lover, femme fatale. Audiences watch, dazzled. Rome's lies survive, but now gilded with technicolor and diamonds. The motif glitters spotlight hotter than truth. Would you sneer at the absurdity pearls as earrings, pyramids as backdrops, scripts filled with words you never uttered, or would you relish it? Knowing no Roman general's ghost shines 30 feet tall on silver screens, each generation reshapes you. To Victorians, you are warning. To moderns, you are icon. To feminists, you are symbol of power twisted by patriarchy. To skeptics, you are proof that history lies. Your body is ash, but your archetype multiplies. The motif widens your image sharper than your life, and through it all, the asp remains. Not because it is true, but because it is vivid. The basket of figs, the sudden strike, the dramatic collapse, it plays better than a vial of bitter liquid. Audiences crave theatre, they crave spectacle. They crave certainty, even if false, and so the snake outlives you, coils tighter each century, until schoolchildren recite it as fact. Would you sigh, seeing the myth eclipse the woman, or would you accept it, because myth is the only immortality mortals ever get in quiet corners? Scholars debate, they dig fragments, chase papyri, compare accounts. Was it snake? Was it poison? Was it Octavian's blade cloaked in rumour they cannot agree? And in their disagreement, you laugh, because the riddle itself is your revenge. Every paper, every book, every lecture whispers your name again. The motif hums uncertainty as crown. Your archetype becomes larger than Egypt, larger than Rome. In novels, you stride as femme fatale. In paintings, you recline as goddess. In plays, you die beautifully again and again, eyeliner smudging under stage lights. They forget your treaties, your strategies, your diplomacy, but they cannot forget your silhouette, your shadow, your myth. And perhaps, in the still hours, you prefer it. Empires crumble, but stories seduce forever. Would you agree that survival through story is sweeter than survival through flesh? The irony deepens. Octavian crowned himself Augustus, the revered one, builder of empire. His marble crumbles. His name lingers in textbooks. Yes, but without allure, without perfume, without theatre. You remain dangerous, enticing, evergreen. Tourists line up not to whisper his tragedies, but to gaze at your legend. The motif sharpens eyeliner outlives empire, and now, centuries later, someone lies in bed safe, warm, scrolling glowing glass. They find you again, not in temples or scrolls, but in bedtime history whispered through headphones. Your shadow curls into their room, your myth glimmers in their half-closed eyes. They drift, soothed by the same uncertainty that once terrified Rome. Would you smile at that your lullaby is distortion, your immortality a bedtime story? You're no longer watching Cleopatra on a gilded throne or a painted stage. You're staring into a mirror. Her face, sharpened by centuries of ink and film, stares back at you not as queen, not as myth, but as reflection. The motif flickers her gaze within glass. History always insists it is about the past, but tonight, lying in your bed, you sense the trick. History is always about the present about us, and Cleopatra has become the perfect mirror, polished by propaganda, theatre, Hollywood, and endless retellings. She reflects not who she was, but what each age fears about power, about women, about survival itself. Would you dare hold that mirror closer, or would you, like so many before, prefer to squint at her silhouette rather than meet her eyes? Octavian wanted her to be cautionary tale, the foreign temptress who ruined a Roman hero. Shakespeare wanted her to be tragic muse doomed, dazzling, impossible not to love. Hollywood wanted her to be spectacle eyeliner so thick it outshone pyramids. And now, what do we want her to be? You shift under your blanket, feeling the weight of the question. Perhaps we want her to be proof that history repeats, that media distorts, that even in death, image outweighs truth. The motif lingers, candlelight bouncing against glass. Look around your own world. Do powerful women still face the Cleopatra treatment CEO, dismissed as bossy? Politician branded untrustworthy? Actress reduced to scandal? Even now, centuries later, power on a woman's shoulders still triggers the same distortions. Cleopatra was first archetype, not the last. Would you feel horror, realizing propaganda never died, or relief, that at least you can name it now, call it what it is, resist it in your own time? Her reflection softens as you think. Because she's not only archetype of distortion, she is also archetype of endurance. Every lie Rome spread was meant to erase her, and yet she survived in story. Every smear was supposed to bury her, and yet it immortalized her. The motif warms survival as shadow. Lying here, you breathe steady. Your day may have felt heavy mails, deadlines, phone calls buzzing late. But Cleopatra reminds you survival is rarely dignified, rarely clean, rarely fair. And yet, survival is enough. She lived through incest courts, civil wars, betrayal, and still carved her legend. You lived through another Monday. Both are victories, measured differently, but victories still. Would you let that thought soothe you, that you need not rule empires to count survival as triumph? Your eyelids grow heavier as you linger on her mirror. For every grotesque myth about Cleopatra, there is also a hidden truth that she fought to define her ending. She chose death on her own terms, or at least left Rome confused about which ending was hers. That ambiguity is her last act of power, and ambiguity is a strange comfort. It reminds you that certainty is overrated, that not every question needs answer, not every story needs closure. Sometimes the riddle itself is the survival. The motif hums truth blurred into lullaby. Imagine her looking at you now, not Cleopatra the femme fatale, not Cleopatra the witch, but Cleopatra the survivor who turned distortion into permanence. She meets your eyes through the mirror and tells you silently, you do not need to be perfect. You only need to endure. History will do the rest. Would you believe her? The candle on your nightstand gutters low. Shadows ripple along your walls. For a moment, the room feels like her tomb, filled with perfume, lined with gold, silent with decisions. For a moment, you are both queen and listener, alive and fading. But then the hum of your fan brings you back. The modern world is still here, safe, steady, yours, no chains, no scribes waiting to distort your choices, only quiet, only bed, only this story drifting soft into your ears. The motif rests, flame low, breath slow. Cleopatra as mirror shows you not just distortion, but release. History exaggerated her beauty, her cunning, her ruin. But history also ensures she never disappears. And in that, she becomes paradox destroyed and eternal, defamed and worshipped, dead and alive. Is that not what we all are? In some way distorted in memory, yet persistent, forgotten in details, yet alive in impression. Cleopatra is you. You are her, not in crowns or asps, but in the way you will one day be remembered, not exactly as you were, but as story requires. Would you smile at that distortion is not enemy, but inevitability? You close your eyes. Her image lingers, soft, shimmering, no longer weapon, no longer cage, just a mirror, and in that mirror you see not fear, not dread, but calm. Because if Cleopatra could endure centuries of lies and still survive in memory, you can endure one more night and still wake tomorrow. The motif dims mirror, fading into candlelight, and with that, her story folds into silence. The mirror fades, and in its place comes stone, cold, smooth, heavier than memory. You find yourself walking down a corridor that feels more like a throat than a hallway. Walls tight, ceiling low, air dense with dust and the faint, resinous smell of incense that burned out centuries ago. The motif glows, faintly candle flame inside stone. This is no palace, no painted stage. This is where stories come to sleep. The tombs, the archives, the rooms where papyrus waits patiently in silence. Your hand brushes limestone blocks. their edges sharp even after centuries. You can feel the temperature difference, stone cooler than your skin, air warmer near your breath. The silence presses against you, thick and close, somewhere far ahead. A drip echoes water slipping from ceiling to floor, again and again, carving time slower than any historian's pen. Would you pause here, uneasy or lean closer, curious, letting silence cradle you like a weighted blanket in one chamber? You see fragments of Cleopatra's Alexandria, broken tablets scratched with hieroglyphs, scrolls so fragile they crumble when the air shifts, drawings of stars that no longer line the night sky. The library is gone. Yes, but not entirely. Whispers of it survive in these hidden alcoves, smuggled texts, copies made by monks who barely understood the language they preserved. You imagine scholars 2,000 years ago, copying lines by candlelight, eyelids heavy, hands cramping, their sweat dripping onto papyrus. They never knew their work would be all that survived. They never knew they were the last to carry a flame forward. The motif flickers knowledge as ember, and yet what is preserved is never the whole. You see gaps where texts end mid-sentence, whole pages gone, eaten by insects or damp. What survives is partial, jagged, warped. Cleopatra survives like this too, half erased, half invented. Would you sigh at the irony that history never truly tells you the past, only offers shards, shadows, and guesses? You step deeper. The torch you carry pops faintly, resin scent stronger. Ahead, statues line the wall, gods half erased by chisel. Roman soldiers once came through here, hacking off noses, striking out eyes. Even gods had to be defaced so Rome's story could stand taller. Still, you notice even broken, their faces linger. A nose chipped does not erase a stare. An eye scratched does not erase presence. Even in ruin, divinity remains. The motif murmurs survival despite scars. Would you feel comfort in that? That what is broken may still outlast what is whole in another chamber? You stumble upon baskets wicker dried to husks, figs petrified into stone lumps. You freeze, half expecting the hiss of scales. But there is no asp here, only the echo of rumour. You reach into one basket. The figs crumble into dust, sweeter than rot, lighter than ash. You taste the air and imagine the whisper of a serpent that may never have been. And in that absence, you laugh softly, because absence is as powerful as presence. The motif curls emptiness filling the room. As you move further, you find inscriptions left by Roman hands, graffiti carved into sacred walls, crude names, boasts, insults. Some soldier centuries ago, drunk on conquest, scrawled his Latin into eternity. His empire is gone, his family forgotten, but his messy letters still cling here, etched shallow but stubborn. Would you marvel at that sometimes the graffiti outlives the monument? You run your hand over the grooves. The Latin feels foreign yet familiar, like reading emails years after the sender has died. You realize history is less archive, more accident. Cleopatra's myth survived because Romans had better scribes than Egyptians. Octavian's rewrite survived because it was repeated, performed, printed. In the end, endurance was never about truth, it was about repetition. The motif sharpens story as echo, not fact, and you, standing in this tomb, become part of the repetition. You breathe, you remember, you whisper. In your own way, you become scribe, carrying the echo into another night. Would you smile at that even insomnia can be form of preservation, that lying awake, listening to Cleopatra's shadow, you are part of her afterlife? The candle gutters, wax drips onto your fingers, warm, stinging slightly. You don't flinch. Instead, you hold on to the sensation. Pain is proof of presence, proof you're still here, not yet story. But you know one day, you too will be story. Someone will take your choices, your struggles, your laughter, and reshape them. They will forget your real face and remember only fragments, a quote, a photograph, a rumour. You, too, will become archetype boss, father, failure, hero, fool. The motif deepens you too, will be rewritten. Would you resist that, or would you find peace, knowing distortion is survival in disguise? The tomb hums with quiet. You breathe slower, Each inhale tastes of stone dust. Each exhale fogs faintly in the cool air. Your shoulders relax. The silence that once pressed heavy now feels soft, almost kind, like the world itself telling you, rest. It is enough. The motif rests torch dim, silence wide. You move deeper still. The passage narrows until you have to turn your shoulders sideways. The torch scrapes stone, leaving faint black scars. The flame trembles, as though it, too, wants to bow out of this silence. Then an opening, a chamber wide, round, filled with sarcophagi. The lid's heavy, carved with faces serene in death. Some faces you recognize from coins, some from statues in museums, some only from imagination. But lying here, they are all equal. King or servant, priest or thief. The stone makes no distinction. The motif softens silence, flattening crowns. Would you pause here, realizing Cleopatra herself may lie in some chamber, not unlike this one hidden, waiting, erased but not gone? You kneel beside one sarcophagus. Dust coats your knees. The scent of old resin clings sharp in your nose. You run a finger across hieroglyphs worn smooth. Time has blurred them into almost nothing, yet you can still trace outlines of wings, ankhs, serpents. Even erasure leaves residue. Even silence leaves shape. The motif hums memory as outline. You think of Cleopatra again not as queen, not as seductress, not even as archetype but as body. Flesh that once hurt, once laughed, once slept badly on humid nights. She was mortal before myth, mortal like you. Would you find comfort in that? That myth itself is built on something as ordinary as skin, sweat, heartbeat. The air feels cooler here. You blow out your torch, and moonlight trickles faint through a crack above. The chamber glows silver, soft, like underwater. The silence shifts from heavy to hushed. You lie back on the stone floor, the chill seeping into your spine. The stars outside are not the same stars Cleopatra saw, but they whisper the same patterns. The motif glimmers stars as continuity, and you realize the tomb is not just prison, it is passage. Memory does not end here, it begins here, reshaped, carried out, retold. The sarcophagi whisper not of endings, but of recycling bodies into dust, dust into stories, stories into myths. Would you accept that cycle if it meant Eustace too might never fully vanish? You close your eyes. The floor feels less like stone now, more like mattress. The silence less like coffin, more like blanket. The tomb transforms slowly into bedroom. You imagine Rome's propaganda, Shakespeare's verses, Hollywood's glare all fading, like torches burning out. What remains is simpler the knowledge that you are part of the same cycle. Cleopatra's distortion, your distortion, they are both lullabies, ways for the living to hold on to the dead, ways to cradle themselves against the dark. The motif rests distortion as comfort, and in that thought, your breath evens. You no longer feel like an intruder in the tomb. You feel like a guest. The dead do not scare you now. They soothe you. Their stillness is example, their silence invitation. You're not alone in your bed tonight. You're surrounded by centuries of sleepers, each one proof that rest, at last, always comes. Would you let yourself join them, just for a while? You open your eyes one last time. The moonlight fades. The chamber darkens. Somewhere, faint, you hear the echo of water dripping against eddy, eternal, like a clock with no hands, measuring only patience. The motif fades, drip as heartbeat, and with that sound, you surrender. The tomb holds you gently. The mirror of Cleopatra lingers only as shadow. Tomorrow, you will carry her story again, but tonight, you let it slip, like sand through fingers, like wax down a candle. You let silence cradle you fully until breath itself feels optional. The dead whisper nothing, but somehow, you hear it. Rest. It is enough. The motif extinguishes, candle gone. Darkness soft. The story is almost gone now. The torch that carried you through tombs, mirrors, and myths is flickering low. The flame bends, clings, stretches thin, as if even fire grows tired of retelling. The candle is gone, but your eyes are still open. Darkness does not mean absence. it only means other senses wake up. You hear a sound, faint at first, like the brush of linen on stone. A whisper, not words exactly, but rhythm. It is the kind of rhythm that never really ends, drip of water in tombs, sway of reeds on the Nile, breath of sleepers through centuries. Cleopatra is gone, but the chamber still holds the echo of her, and that echo does not vanish. It travels. You feel it touch your skin like cool night air. You breathe it in. A scent not of incense this time, but of resin long dried. Faint sweetness mixed with dust. It is not unpleasant, it is ancient comfort, as if the air itself has grown patient after so many years of waiting. The motif lingers, echoes instead of flames. Would you imagine that even silence has its own vibration? The way a room remembers the last note of music, you close your eyes, and suddenly you are not in your room, not in this century. You are drifting back into a barge on the Nile, stars laid like nets overhead. The water laps against wood, each ripple a tiny bell. The air smells of river mud, of fish drying on ropes, of perfume poured too generously. The sound of oars is steady, patient. For a moment, you think you hear laughter, husky, amused. Perhaps hers, or perhaps only yours, folded back through time. The echo is not history exactly. It is something softer, like when you half remember a dream, a sensation without outline. Would you call that comfort or unease? You shift under your blanket. Fabric brushes your cheek like papyrus. You imagine scribes leaning over by oil lamps, their reed pens scratching out accounts, grain tallies, tax lists, letters of generals. They did not know their words would vanish. Most of them did, but some linger, half broken, scratched into shards of pottery. And when read aloud today, they sound like whispers from another bed, another night. The motif deepens, whispers on clay. You wonder if that is what survival really is, not armies, not monuments, but fragments. Small notes left behind for someone far away, far later, to find. Like you, scrolling at midnight, stumbling into a voice that should have been dust. Would you find peace in that you, too, will leave fragments, emails, scribbles, recordings, a comment under a video? You may not command an empire, but your voice will echo somewhere. The echo grows warmer. You feel it not in your ears, but in your chest, a resonance more than sound. Your heartbeat slows to match it. You think of the servants in palaces, forgotten, names unrecorded, the women grinding grain until their arms burned, the guards standing long nights at palace gates, listening for trouble. They had no coins with their faces, no poets to immortalize them. Yet their breath was just as real as Cleopatra's, their sleep just as deep. And maybe their whispers are stronger, because they were more numerous, because survival was their true crown. The motif softens crowd of whispers, stronger than a single voice. Would you rest easier knowing that even the forgotten are still here, that in the hush between your breaths, you are not alone? The darkness around you is not empty. It is full-layered with those voices, not loud, not frightening, just steady, like surf, like wind in trees, like static from an old radio. You let it wash over you. The stories blur. Cleopatra dissolves back into them, not queen, not seductress, not myth, just another sleeper, another whisperer. You breathe slower. Your eyelids feel heavy. The echo has become a lullaby. And you realize the candle never really went out. It only changed shape. Flame became sound. Light became whisper. Cleopatra became echo, and echo became your rest. The motif rests whisper as light. The candle is gone, but your eyes are still open. Darkness does not mean absence, it only means other senses wake up. You hear a sound, faint at first, like the brush of linen on stone. A whisper, not words exactly, but rhythm. It is the kind of rhythm that never really ends, drip of water in tombs, sway of reeds on the Nile, breath of sleepers through centuries. Cleopatra is gone, but the chamber still holds the echo of her, and that echo does not vanish, it travels. You feel it touch your skin like cool night air. You breathe it in, a scent not of incense this time, but of resin long dried, faint sweetness mixed with dust. It is not unpleasant, it is ancient comfort, as if the air itself has grown patient after so many years of waiting. The motif lingers echoes instead of flames. Would you imagine that even silence has its own vibration, the way a room remembers the last note of music? You close your eyes, and suddenly you are not in your room, not in this century. You're drifting back into a barge on the Nile, stars laid like nets overhead. The water laps against wood, each ripple a tiny bell. The air smells of river mud, of fish drying on ropes, of perfume poured too generously. The sound of oars is steady, patient. For a moment, you think you hear laughter, low, husky, amused. Perhaps hers, or perhaps only yours, folded back through time. The echo's not history exactly. It is something softer, like when you half remember a dream, a sensation without outline. Would you call that comfort or unease? You shift under your blanket. Fabric brushes your cheek like papyrus. You imagine scribes leaning over by oil lamps, their reed pens scratching out accounts, grain tallies, tax lists, letters of generals. They did not know their words would vanish. Most of them did, but some linger, half broken, scratched into shards of pottery, and when read aloud today, they sound like whispers from another bed, another night. The motif deepens whispers on clay. You wonder if that is what survival really is, not armies, not monuments, but fragments. Small notes left behind for someone far away, far later, to find, like you, scrolling at midnight, stumbling into a voice that should have been dust. Would you find peace in that you, too, will leave fragments, emails, scribbles, recordings, a comment under a video? You may not command an empire, but your voice will echo somewhere. The echo grows warmer. You feel it not in your ears, but in your chest, a resonance more than sound. Your heartbeat slows to match it. You think of the servants in palaces, forgotten, names unrecorded, the women grinding grain until their arms burned, the guards standing long nights at palace gates, listening for trouble. They had no coins with their faces, no poets to immortalize them. Yet their breath was just as real as Cleopatra's, their sleep just as deep. And maybe their whispers are stronger, because they were more numerous, because survival was their true crown. The motif softens crowd of whispers, stronger than a single voice. Would you rest easier knowing that even the forgotten are still here, that in the hush between your breaths, you are not alone? The darkness around you is not empty. It is full-layered with those voices, not loud, not frightening, just steady, like surf, like wind in trees, like static from an old radio. You let it wash over you. The stories blur. Cleopatra dissolves back into the not queen, not seductress, not myth, just another sleeper, another whisperer. You breathe slower while your eyelids feel heavy. The echo has become a lullaby, and you realize the candle never really went out. It only changed shape. Flame became sound, light became whisper, Cleopatra became echo, and echo became your rest. The motif rests whisper as light. The motif returns a candle burning out. You lie back, not in a palace, not in a tomb, but in your bed-soft sheets against your skin, the hum of a fan steady in the background. The air smells not of incense or dust, but of fabric and soap. Yet Cleopatra's shadow lingers, woven into the quiet like a thread you can't quite unpick. And that is what makes bedtime history so strange, and so soothing. You discover that the strangest, darkest empires can dissolve into something as gentle as a sleep story. Would you smile at that 2,000 years later? Cleopatra's myth still keeps you company as you drift. The flame dips again. In its trembling, you see her ending snake or poison, dagger or rumour. It doesn't matter, and what mattered was the choice, or at least the illusion of it. She controlled her exit, and history lost control of her truth. The motif hums control through surrender. You breathe slower. Every inhale feels cooler, every exhale heavier. The day's noise recedes the emails, the news, the voices of a world always in a hurry. Here, time is slower. Cleopatra's centuries compressed into minutes, and your minutes stretched into eternity. Maybe that is the real gift of this dark history, not certainty, not accuracy, but perspective. To know lives harsher than yours once unfolded, that myth stranger than your worries once carried empires. that even queens lay down and close their eyes at last? Would you let that thought soften you? The way silk softens stone, the flame steadies for a moment, just enough to show shapes in the dark. You see again the motifs you carried all night cloth wrapping, pearls dissolving, eyeliner sharper than daggers. They blur together into something gentler now, less sharp, less absurd. They become lullabies, not weapons. The motif shifts weapon into whisper. And you realize you have travelled far not just through Cleopatra's world, but through centuries of Cleopatra history, each layer stranger and more human than the last. And yet you ended here, in silence, exactly where every story ends. Not with applause, not with empire, not with fear, but with rest. That is the secret ending all stories share sleep. The candle bends low, wax spilling like sand through an hourglass. You think of how Rome tried to erase Cleopatra, and failed. How Shakespeare reshaped her, how Hollywood gilded her, how scholars debated her, how you carried her again tonight. Myths survive, but so do we. The motif calms survival as bedtime ritual. You may not command armies or dissolve pearls, but you endured your day. You faced deadlines, calls, decisions, a different kind of battlefield. You lived through it, and now you rest. That is your empire tonight, the right to stop. Would you let yourself rule that empire, just for a few hours of sleep? The flame shrinks further, a small golden tear trembling against darkness. It leans sideways, wax almost gone. And you realize this is what Cleopatra knew, what every tomb knew, what every myth whispers. Endings are not failures. Endings are releases. The motif rests release as crown. And so, as your eyes close, you join the same long procession. Pharaohs, peasants, soldiers, dreamer seeks surrendered to rest, as you will now. You're not alone in this silence. You're part of it. The candle bends once more, and then darkness. Not threatening, not cold, just soft. The kind of darkness that welcomes, the kind that whispers rest. It is enough. Your breath steadies. The world outside fades. Cleopatra fades. History itself fades. What remains is you, quiet, safe, alive for now, drifting into the oldest ritual humans know, relaxing historical stories that ease the mind, lull the body, and carry you gently into dreams. The motif extinguishes candle gone, night whole. And if anyone asks what carried you off tonight, you can smile softly, eyes closed, and whisper the answer, not Rome, not asps, not propaganda, only a bedtime history sleep story, whispered in the dark, steady as your own breath. Because in the end, the archetype you became is not prison. It is escape. Octavian buried you twice. Shakespeare resurrected you once. Hollywood dressed you thrice. And now, the world keeps you alive nightly, in whispers, in screens, in dreams. The motif rests candle flickering against eyeliner. And so, from queen to archetype, you slip further from truth, but closer to eternity. You're not Cleopatra the woman anymore. You're Cleopatra the mirror, the shadow that each age bends to its own fears, its own desires, its own fantasies. And that, perhaps, is the sharpest survival of all. The candle is gone, but your eyes are still open. Darkness does not mean absence, it only means other senses wake up. You hear a sound, faint at first, like the brush of linen on stone, a whisper, not words exactly, but rhythm. It is the kind of rhythm that never really ends. Drip of water in tombs, sway of reeds on the Nile, breath of sleepers through centuries. Cleopatra is gone, but the chamber still holds the echo of her, and that echo does not vanish. It travels. You feel it touch your skin like cool night air. You breathe it in, a scent not of incense this time, but of resin long dried, faint sweetness mixed with dust. It is not unpleasant. It is ancient comfort, as if the air itself has grown patient after so many years of waiting. The motif lingers, echoes instead of flames. Would you imagine that even silence has its own vibration, the way a room remembers the last note of music? You close your eyes, and suddenly you are not in your room, not in this century. You're drifting back into a barge on the Nile, stars laid like nets overhead. The water laps against wood, each ripple a tiny bell. The air smells of river mud, of fish drying on ropes, of perfume poured too generously. The sound of oars is steady, patient. For a moment, you think you hear laughter, low, husky, amused, perhaps hers, or perhaps only yours, folded back through time. The echo's not history exactly. It is something softer like when you half remember a dream, a sensation without outline. Would you call that comfort or unease? You shift under your blanket. Fabric brushes your cheek like papyrus. You imagine scribes leaning over by oil lamps, their reed pens scratching out accounts, grain tallies, tax lists, letters of generals. They did not know their words would vanish. Most of them did. But some linger, half broken, scratched into shards of pottery. And when read aloud today, they sound like whispers from another bed, another night. The motif deepens, whispers on clay. You wonder if that is what survival really is, not armies, not monuments, but fragments. Small notes left behind for someone far away, far later, to find. Like you, scrolling at midnight, stumbling into a voice that should have been dust. Would you find peace in that you, too, will leave fragments, emails, scribbles, recordings, a comment under a video? You may not command an empire, but your voice will echo somewhere. The echo grows warmer. You feel it not in your ears, but in your chest, a resonance more than sound. Your heartbeat slows to match it. You think of the servants in palaces, forgotten, names unrecorded, the women grinding grain until their arms burned, the guards standing long nights at palace gates, listening for trouble. They had no coins with their faces, no poets to immortalize them, yet their breath was just as real as Cleopatra's, their sleep just as deep. And maybe their whispers are stronger, because they were more numerous, because survival was their true crown. The motif softens crowd of whispers, stronger than a single voice. Would you rest easier knowing that even the forgotten are still here, that in the hush between your breaths, you're not alone? The darkness around you is not empty. It is full-layered with those voices, not loud, not frightening, just steady, like surf, like wind in trees, like static from an old radio. You let it wash over you, the stories blur. Cleopatra dissolves back into them, not queen, not seductress, not myth, just another sleeper, another whisperer. You breathe slower, your eyelids feel heavy. The echo has become a lullaby, and you realize the candle never really went out, it only changed shape. Flame became sound, light became whisper, Cleopatra became echo, and echo became your rest. The motif rests whisperer's light,